Okay, we had an executive session prior to the meeting pursuant to ORS 192.602E to conduct deliberations of persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. We did not make any decisions in those meetings, and we have no necessity to come back to bring anything back in the regular session. So at this time, I will call the regular City Commission meeting for Wednesday, November 6th to order. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Rachel L. Smith. Here. Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Present.
Mayor Dan Holliday.
Here. Please stand and join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, a couple things here. I've got a proclamation honoring Oregon City's fallen officers Robert Lidke and George Hanlon, and I normally don't read proclamations, but this one I'm going to, if I can find it. Where did it go?
Under your agenda.
Is it?
Under.
There we go. Okay. So, to recognize and honor the service and sacrifice of those law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty while protecting the Oregon City community. Whereas law enforcement is an honorable, hardworking profession that diligently seeks to make our community more livable and safe, and whereas there is no greater sacrifice an officer can make for their community than to give their life, and whereas the death of a police officer shocks the very soul of the community, our government and the very freedoms the officers have sworn to protect, and whereas the impact of this tragedy upon the officers' family, friends, department, and community is immeasurable, and whereas our hearts and thoughts go out to the many killed in action while serving to protect our community, now therefore I, Dan Holliday, Mayor of Oregon City, along with the City Commission and the citizens of Oregon City, Oregon, extend heartfelt condolences to the families of the following officers. Reserve Police Officer Robert Lidke lost on November 13th, 2013. Police Officer George J. Hanlon lost on April 23rd, 1906. These officers have been lost but will never be forgotten. This community will be forever grateful. We ask for a moment of silence as we remember Oregon City's valuable public service and pray for the healing and hope into the future. In witness hereof, I have here to set my hand this 6th day of November, 2019. Okay. Moving on. Oh, this is one of my very favorite things too. So we have an oath of office for Oregon City Police Department for Sergeant John Pagano?
Joey Pagano.
Okay, there we go. Chief Bam.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Commission. We swear in sergeants, people are sworn in when they first come to work for us, and when they get promoted, we do the same thing to just kind of reaffirm their commitment to our agency. I think the sergeant role is probably one of the most crucial roles to our police department. Their first line supervision, and basically after 5 o'clock, they're the chief of police. They make decisions that have a tremendous amount of liability, tremendous decisions on people's lives. They're out mentoring, training, and making sure that our officers are doing the absolute best out in the community. The bar for who we make a sergeant is very high, and I'm very happy, very excited to tell you a little bit about Joey Pagano, and then we will swear him in. Joe came to work for us in April of 2012. His wife, Allie, is here with their 9-month-old Brooklyn, who I think was talking to us a little bit ago. Joey, it isn't often that we say that we have somebody working for us who was a valedictorian at their high school. And Joey was a valedictorian of Gladstone High School and went to University of Portland, where he got a degree in biology. His parents, Mark and Linda, are here, and his in-laws, John and Debbie, are here as well. So Joe is, we just went through a process. There were 8 people who went through our process. And we really could have made a fantastic sergeant out of any of them. And Joe's worked his tail off in the detective unit, in the patrol unit, and is our next sergeant. So, Mr. Mayor, if you'll go ahead and take care of the oath. Joey, come on forward. Yeah, that's good.
I am recovering, slowly, but I am recovering. So if you please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Joseph Pagano,
Do solemnly swear that I will uphold the law,
do solemnly swear that I will uphold the law,
support the Constitution of the United States
support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Oregon.
and the state of Oregon.
I will abide by the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics
I will abide by the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics
and the department's rules and regulations,
and the department's rules and regulations,
while faithfully performing my duties as police officer for Oregon City, Oregon.
while faithfully performing my duties as a police officer for Oregon City, Oregon.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. Where's Katie at?
I'm right here, I'm ready.
Oh, okay. We're gonna do a picture with just the 3 of us first, and then we'll let the family.
Sure.
Okay. Go ahead, bring family. Oh, all of them, come on.
You're sitting in the background, which I don't
He's smiling ear to ear. Like, you can take a picture of the back of my head.
I sure love my little guy. Smile, Frank.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Congratulations.
Anytime now.
Okay, so item 3C, this is another kind of exciting thing. We have a Bronze His Boots presentation by the Kaniba Neighborhood Association. Chief, you have anything to say first?
Yes. So this is really a super cool thing that the Kaniba Neighborhood Association has done, and probably people outside of the Kaniba Neighborhood Association who've contributed here. One, I want to just kind of the weight of how cool this is. Wendy sent me a text a little bit ago. Wendy and Ziva are here, and she had. I told her about this not long ago, what they had done, and she saw it National Night Out. They had a booth out. But I think what we're about to talk about was a big enough deal that Wendy made it out to come, and I think just kind of say thank you by her presence here. And Wendy, we're very happy that you made it. So at our Chiefs Advisory meeting, I was given a little presentation on the building and what it was going to look like, some design elements. And one of the things that we had talked about was taking Rob's work boots, bronzing them, and putting them outside kind of near the flagpoles, just as kind of a little bit more about, his name's going to be on the building. And Karen, my good friend, started asking some questions about how much it was going to cost, and said that she thought that maybe they would like to raise some money, or she was going to inquire with their neighborhood association. And I really probably didn't think I was going to hear back, but I think I heard back very quickly from Karen, and she's very driven, and got a lot of energy, and and I think really kind of spearheaded this project with some people from her neighborhood. So I think Ken Basinger was going to, on behalf of the neighborhood, come up and kind of explain sort of what the Kaniba Neighborhood Association did to raise this money for these boots.
Thank you. I am Ken Basinger, Chair of the Kaniba Neighborhood Association. And as the chief said, this all started when Karen Blaha had the idea of doing something. And we put together an idea pretty quickly, kicked it off at the National Night Out, and the support we got from the minute we put up the banner was just overwhelming. We had little children dropping nickels and dimes in the jar, and we had donors contributing large sums. And we do have a check to present to the police department tonight, and if you want to come up here, we'll...
Yeah, I'd like to have Wendy come up too, if you don't mind being put on the spot, Wendy. Never had someone give me a big check.
You get a big check every month, dude.
Not away, Mayor.
He left himself open for that.
The amount on the check is $2,323.13. 23.13.
About $1,000 more than we needed. So.
Find a good home for it.
Yeah, we will.
And there's one other thing that we have. Dennis Anderson, who is an extremely good painter.
Presenting this to the police department.
Hey, can you show us? Oh, nice.
Wow.
I like
These
that.
are the boots.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Dennis, maybe tell a little bit about who you are as an artist.
Hold it. I gotta have a mic for this.
I'm Dennis Anderson, and I live in Oregon City, and I retired as a professor of art and design. And this became a way, in this instance, to give back to the community and the police department, being a part of the group and the neighborhood to, put this all together was really my contribution. And so we joined the chief one afternoon, actually early in the morning, and he jockeyed the cars, put the boots on numerous cars. We took some shots, and the culmination became this painting. And I was sort of reluctant to come, seeing that it's really about the check and the boots and the commemoration. But the painting for me is like a gift to the police department, the men and women that serve Oregon City.
So, real quick, what we're going to do with this painting is, so we're going to have the boots outside, and people will maybe go by them, not see them, not know exactly what they are. We're going to hang this somewhere in the front lobby with something down below that explains what they are, something about this community effort, something about the boots, so people might see that and go, oh, I didn't even see the boots, and notice that outside, or they see them outside and then notice them on the inside. The last thing I'm going to say is Wendy has said repeatedly that it was extremely important for her that people in this community never, ever, ever forget her husband's sacrifice. And I think this is not something we asked a community to do. These guys came up with this on their own, and I think it's proof that people in this community are never going to forget.
Chief, don't we have one more thing? So one of the major donors, Finance of America Mortgage, gave a large enough donation that they qualified for shirts. And so these are the shirts that we're presenting to you. I have one more at home that I forgot to bring. And I did speak to Brian, who has a very difficult last name, but who rode with Rob. And I said, oh, I'm sure he'll be getting one of these.
Well, thank you very much.
You're good.
I'm good, thank you very much.
So before we move on, there's two things I have to say. One is that the part of the motivation for the Kingman Neighborhood Association was sort of to apologize for all of the turmoil that they've had in their neighborhood association over the last few years. And so I want to thank them for that. And then one other piece of information that hasn't really got out there too far is that we still do recognize George Hanlon. And so while the building is going to be named after Rob Lipke, the commission chambers are going to be the George J. Hanlon Commission Chambers.
Cool.
Okay, so now we're moving on. Metro update by Christine Lewis. So if you guys want to take a minute and clear out the ones you want to clear out.
Oh, perfect.
Good.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners, for having me tonight. Also, thank you for a warning that some people may want to clear out. I will try and be brief in
Just your name for the record, please.
Christine Lewis, Metro Councilor representing the communities of District 2, including the heart of the district, Oregon City. I am here tonight just to let you know a little bit about what's going on at Metro and what I'm working on. And I see a lot of you at a lot of meetings, and this is a time to kind of comprehensively step back and look with an overview of what's going on. I have a PowerPoint, but I might, oop. So I wanted to start to just reflect that yesterday was election day and we passed our Parks and Nature Bond renewal. It passed overwhelmingly region-wide and in Clackamas County with over 61% of the vote. So that's a great vote of confidence for Parks and Nature overall. But in particular, there's $20 million dedicated for the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. And that is definitely one of our partnerships that I'm committed to, and it's really exciting to see the support for that project moving forward. The measure was put together through a community-driven process, and we had stakeholders from across the region and from communities sometimes not necessarily connected to parks. So there's a lot of emphasis in this measure on access to parks. So that's why you see specifically called out trail funding. That's going to be new. But like in previous measures, there is the local share. So there will be partnership, make sure that the local share funds get drawn down by the city. And then finally, as I said, the other new project money is going to be $20 million dedicated for Willamette Falls. I look forward to working with you and others in Clackamas County implementing these projects. Wanted to give an update that the Southwest Corridor that's looking to extend the MAX to create a reasonable and reliable fast transportation option down the Southwest Corridor along Barber all the way to Bridgeport Village and connecting that to downtown Portland is at a stage where the draft EIS has been completed and preferred alternatives are selected. Design and engineering continue in a preparation for final analysis and potential funding in a transportation measure next year. Metro made a commitment to voters last year, Election Day last year, when we passed the Affordable Housing Bond Measure. The initial phase of the early projects, the pilot projects, has already closed. And this is a chart showing actually where we ended up in July of this year with our progress towards goal just in the initial pilot projects. Within the next month, we're going to see jurisdictions start to come forward for the rest of the funding. So for here in Oregon City, it's important to watch Clackamas County since they represent the housing work.
We watch
here. Yeah, I know you do. But we'll have that process starting in December for the final IGA and funds to go to Clackamas County. And just a reminder that we are working on these homes so that half of them are family-sized units, since we know that's a great area of need. So that's 2-3 bedroom units. And we're also making sure to balance the 0 to 30% median family income and the 30 to 60 so that we are serving those most in need. And mentioned our Get Moving 2020. We're moving towards a potential package next year on the ballot, with our goal being an investment measure that prepares for our future and makes sure that we have easier access to get around the entire region. We have a transportation task force that's been meeting throughout this year and has started to identify priority corridors. And we've also had local investment teams that have been in each of the 3 counties working on kind of the local feet on the ground perspective, and providing direct input to council and to the task force so that we can help identify where our investments will be most valuable. The upcoming task force meeting in Clackamas County is going to be at the Harmony campus on December 18th. I think that's a really important day for folks to show up from Clackamas County. One, to make sure that the task force understands our needs. It's going to be a challenge for some of the folks from the west side and from downtown to get to Harmony campus. And it's like, yep, welcome to what it means to get around Clackamas County. And I also am just anticipating that's going to be the first meeting where some of the revenue options are going to be discussed. Since we've kind of developed some of the program and routes that are our priorities, now we're going to start talking about what funding mechanisms are at play.
Can I make a statement right there before you move on?
Yes, you can.
I read a piece in Willamette Week, I think it was today or yesterday, that this big crowd of red-shirted people came in and said they didn't want any of this money to be used for cars.
Yep.
Well, I'll tell you right now, if a substantial portion of this money isn't used for actual people transportation, not buses or light rail, I'll actively work against it. So we need to make sure that a good portion of this money is being used to take care of the needs of Clackamas County, and the majority of the folks in Clackamas County, I would say probably 95%, use a car to get to and from work and other kinds of things. So that's just my statement.
I hear you, and I am constantly the voice of District 2 is not in the same place that downtown Portland is.
Yes.
And District 2 needs to be able to find success in this measure. This measure has to touch every nook and cranny of the region, and if we don't put emphasis on making sure that the edges of the region succeed, the center is not ever going to be able to succeed. It's a partnership and a balance, and I'm really committed to making sure that we have safety options, speed options, all of that for the entire region, but I'm really sticking up for D2 when I can.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah. For a little levity, the Oregon Zoo has a new lamprey exhibit. Lamprey are really fascinating, kind of ugly, kind of cute creatures. They're like the dinosaurs because they're 400 million-year-old species, and they're an important part of the history of the Pacific Northwest. And in particularly, they have tribal significance. These specific lamprey at the zoo came from the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla, and it's part of some tribal-led efforts to collect lamprey that then eventually will get returned to their habitats. But lots to learn there. So if you're out with children, go see the lamprey, or on your own. Zoo Lights is coming up. Metro also manages visitor venues like the Convention Center and the Expo Center and Portland 5 Performing Arts. The really exciting news out of OCC is we have completed our renovations. So Oregon Convention Center, the North Ballroom is reopened and is beautiful, and that is a big part of some of the economic development we do in the region. And the work was done on time, and it's impressive. And of note is a very cool 3D ceiling installation where you can actually see the entire Cascade Range in relief along the ceiling cut out of wood. So if you're ever at the Convention Center, make sure to look up. And then a couple of things going on with solid waste, garbage, and recycling. With regards to recycling, Metro has coordinated with local governments to develop our recycleornot.org campaign. It's a regional resource that has launched this summer and helps to answer the most common recycling questions for everyday recyclers. I follow it on Instagram, and just earlier this week, I actually learned that I can't recycle my receipts because apparently they're coated in something nasty that doesn't recycle. So we are actually getting the word out in new, innovative ways using technology and a traditional digital campaign. Materials that are collected through home recycling programs are finding their ways to new markets due to changes in sorting processes at our recycling facilities in the region. So despite some of the global challenges, we've been able to make some smaller innovations that are helping us. With regard to system investments, I know several of you have come along on tours of Metro South and understand the challenges that are there, but we're evaluating the needs and opportunities to expand our capacity within our greater Portland garbage and recycling system. That includes Metro South. It also includes analysis of additional capacity needs on the west side. And so, in follow-up to the conversations that we had, some of us on the tour at Metro South, I've gone with some of our staff to the wastewater treatment plant across, had a really nice tour there last week. The first room wasn't so nice, it smelled. But I am interested in making sure that we continue to be in partnership and have some collaboration there. And then finally, food scraps. As you know, the Metro Council adopted regional requirement for businesses to separate food scraps from the garbage system starting in 2020. This is something that you have had discussions on and will be taking up again tonight. I'm happy to share just a couple of high-level thoughts or answer questions, but we have technical staff here who can help with the nitty-gritty details as well. Do you want me to take more time, or are you more interested in tabling that for the agenda item?
Yeah, let's do that during the agenda item.
Okay, perfect. And with that, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to come and be in regular contact and in partnership on some of this work.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Any questions?
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Historic Review Board Annual Update, Ms. Turway.
Thank you, Mr. Ken Basinger.
Hi again. Ken Basinger, Historic Review Board. We've had a productive and busy year. We finalized new HRB policies after 4 work sessions, an open house, and multiple hearings. The City Commission approved the new HRB policies on August 7th, 2019. These policies provide clear direction to property owners who want to make small improvements to their historic properties without going before the HRB for review. We also granted $6,197 in 5 preservation grants to local homeowners making needed improvements on their properties. We awarded the Ruth McBride Powers Preservation Award to Vicki and David Gackle for work that they've done on 2 14th Avenue landmark properties in downtown Oregon City. We've held work sessions for the Development Code amendments and the Family-Friendly Route program. We've held land use training session with City Attorney Carrie Richter, and we thank you for that. Mailed out our historic property owners packets and brochures to new owners of historic properties in the city so that they know what their obligations there are. Historic land use reviews, we reviewed 2 applications for new constructions, and we may have 2 more before the end of the year. We reviewed 4 applications for alterations to historic structures and provided design advice for 3 potential projects. And we've had nothing appealed. And with that, if there are any questions.
Any questions?
No question, but I just wanted to say thank you for your work as one of the, not a new property owner, but I appreciate getting the notice to people to property owners who own historic properties. I think it's well worth the CLG money, Certified Local Government Grant money that we get. I think it's important for our community to know that we are merely stewards of these properties. We are taking care of them for today, but we are preserving them for tomorrow and future generations. And thank you on behalf of the commission and to all the members of the Historic Review Board. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. Thanks, Kim. Okay, moving on. 6A is PC 19-119, first reading of ordinance number 19-1014, adopting stormwater master plan as an ancillary to the comprehensive plan. Ms. Turway? I think
We do citizen comments.
Oh, you're right, I missed citizen comment. So do we have anybody that has citizen comment that is not on the agenda tonight?
Yes.
Come on up, sir.
Oh,
Why is it not shown on the floor? There we go. Okay. So Paul Diaz and Mr. Gifford. I assume you're Paul?
Paul Diaz, Oregon City.
Okay.
I just got a brief comment. My name's Paul Diaz. I'm a 15-year member of Iron Workers Local 29 and vice president also. Tonight I'd like to address the board about apprenticeship utilization for upcoming projects in Oregon City. With Nature for All Measure 26-203 passing, Willamette Falls Riverwalk is a primary goal among other possible projects in our area. So I'm here tonight to ask the board for your help. I am here to ask that you ensure that when you're looking for a construction contractor to do this work, that the contractor must use state accredited apprenticeship programs. With the state accredited apprenticeship programs, people who are not made to go to college will learn on the job and earn a family living wage with benefits. Apprenticeships last 2 to 4 years, depending on which trade that you choose. And in those years, you're trained to be a highly skilled, safe worker with no high student loans to be paid back at the end. So I'm here tonight to ask the board, please be aware of this when the time comes. We are all responsible for making sure that the next generation of workers is properly trained to do their work. Thank you for your time.
I'm a 30-year electrician, so I get it.
Yes, sir. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
John Lewis, aware of this?
Oh, I'm sure.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Mr. Gifford and Mr. Edgar.
Prepare the draw to.
Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners, my name is William Gifford and I live in Oregon City. I'm not exactly sure how to phrase all of this because it's not, I'll tell you what it's not about. It's not about people, it's not about personalities, it's about process. And it seems to me as though there are some disconnects in how we get things done. The gap between when decisions are made and when things actually happen. There's something something is not quite fitting right. And
could you be a little less specific at this point?
No, I'm trying to be as vague as possible. But
Very helpful.
with that framing, I want to talk specifically about the Molalla Streetscape project.
Okay.
And the fact that there has been a 30% design and a 60% design and soon to be a 90% design phase, and then apparently it's just going to flip a switch. I know it doesn't happen like that, but there have been opportunities for the public to make comments, but sometimes it feels as though we're shouting down a hole. I know that I'm the land use chair for the for Hillendale Neighborhood Association, and we met with in our joint meeting with the Tower Vista Neighborhood Association, particularly about a particular design aspect of that project, and we disagreed with it. And I came and made a presentation to TAC. TAC thought that it ought to be reviewed differently. And then I don't hear anything. I don't hear anything at all. And to Mr. Lewis's credit, I asked him, and he said that, things are going along, that there have been a couple of tweaks made, but I don't know what those tweaks are. I don't know what's going on. And that's not the position that I generally like to be in, of not knowing what's going on. So I'm just saying that the process of getting things done, and I don't have a solution for it, But I just want to bring that to your attention, that I think that there are some things that, some better communication is needed. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thanks, sir. Mr. Edgar?
Thank you, Mayor. Paul Edgar, Kenema, Oregon City. Two things. I recently had an opportunity to get a map sent to me that was of Oregon City's waterways, and it's actually the Metro map that I found that it was part of Code 1749020. And within it, it spells out maps that are critical in the decision-making in and around NROD areas. And people just don't even know what is NROD and what the protections are and what is around it. Now, all of a sudden, I see Coffee Creek coming right.
Broke my rule, Mr. Edgar.
What?
What is NROD?
Natural Resources Overlay District.
Thank you.
And so we see this, there's a vegetative riparian corridor around all of these creeks and waterways and things like this. And none of it's being enforced. None of it's, people don't even know about it. It seems like people in the city don't even seem to realize what's there. And so I want to get these maps out into each one of the neighborhoods where we zero down. So I brought an example because I'm involved into this stuff. Here's a map from Dogami. And everything in the red here around these circles, these are landslides. If I get down into Kenema's down here, and my house sits right in the middle of a landslide. And people don't even know that and don't even know what the requirements or regulations are for setbacks if there's a landslide, an existing landslide. The front of our property slid off down into 4th Avenue and Ganong Street. If somebody digs away at the toe of that landslide, there's a big rock of 2 or 3 tons that will go down all the way to the Willamette River and will kill people. And so what I get concerned about is this lack of knowledge and how do we communicate that with other people. And so I think we need to get these maps created, printed, showing all of the pertinent information for decision making and for communications. This is about communicating within the city, neighbor to neighbor, to the city, and we got to make sure that these things like this are fully understood by everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Edgar, if you could turn and have our photographer take a picture of that document.
Thanks, sir. Patty Webb.
I'll take that.
Yeah, you have to give everything to her first.
Thank you. He's not gonna get one.
I'm Patty Webb. I live in Kenema at 310 3rd Street. In the Oregon City Comprehensive Plan, designation as an historic property ensures an owner that a compatible setting will be maintained. All residents and property owners benefit from the protection and enhancement of property values, incentives for revitalization and stabilization of an area. That's in the Oregon City Comprehensive Plan. At the August 8th City Commission meeting, John Lewis stated that a new fence could not have been built at 302 3rd, but that it was only maintenance on a 35-year-old fence. I have video of John Lewis and John Adelman measuring my property for a new fence, where none had ever existed before, and I have many photos and emails to prove that also. Yet I'm just supposed to give up 10% of my property, forced to do manual labor to benefit my neighbor, be held responsible for the upkeep of his fence, and be quiet about it, or receive thousands to 10,000s in fines and fees, and I was also threatened with a lien on my house. Large mature trees were cut down on my property without permission and under my protest. Continued explanations of the percentage of tree canopy affected do not give permission to trespass my property and cut my trees. Please note, Why would trees need to be cut for an already existing fence? I received no compensation for my trees being cut. Emails from the historic planner about why a fence should not be built over Coffee Creek were copied to John Lewis, fully aware of the law and property constraints before the fence went up. But when I mentioned the historic codes and overlays to John Lewis, he said, I don't know nothing about that and I don't have time to look it up. It's his property and he can do whatever he wants. Coffee Creek belongs to the public, not to an individual. John Lewis claims all lots in Kenema are 50 by 100, so refuses to look at my survey. He literally refuses to put his eyes on it, telling me you're just pissed off because you don't own as much property as you thought. John Lewis and Martin Montalvo threatened several times to take my property by eminent domain if I did not do what I was told. Why would they do that if the city already owns it as they claim? Why are they so interested and involved far beyond any reasonable or professional interest? October 2018, I filed a complaint with Osbeals. They did an investigation and a letter of concern was placed in John Lewis's file, and you can see Katie Riggs for a copy of that. The first 6 panels of the Adelman fence on 3rd Street should be removed and Coffee Creek made visible again. My property should be returned. My driveway should be returned to natural grade. I should not be harassed or threatened for parking there. I cannot be towed from my own property. I do own my driveway, have a right to park there, rake leaves, water, or walk there without the police or code enforcement being called. My garbage cans should not be thrown in the street or tipped over in my driveway. Public Works has no right to trespass my property, scream at me, or threaten me. See intimidation. The Adelmans should not blow trash into Coffee Creek, etc. John Lewis is too personally involved in this case. He wrote to me, you have nobody to blame for this fence but yourself. This fence is a direct result of your actions. I've never been told what those actions were.
Ms. Webb,
This
you're out of
fence.
time.
Okay, I hope you read the rest of it, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else for public comment before we move forward? Seeing none.
Oh,
we'll move-
wait, there is
What?
someone, I guess. The what?
Trieste, do you have me on the,
Yeah, it's for citizen comment. You're under 7.
So this is stuff that's
Citizen
not on the agenda.
You're on
I take it you have something that's,
I am under 7.
E, yes.
Okay, I thought it was under public comment, sorry.
sure. Okay, then we're gonna move on. PC 19-119, first reading of ordinance number 19-1014, adopting the stormwater master plan as ancillary to the comprehensive plan, and I'm not gonna read that number. Ms. Turway, I understand that we're gonna continue this?
We would like to give a presentation and talk a little bit more about it. but
Okay, go
yes.
ahead.
Christina Robertson Gardner, Senior Planner with the city.
Oh, there we go. I have 4 slides tonight, so not a lot. This is upgrades to the stormwater and grading design standards and the stormwater master plan. This is a legislative process. The Planning Commission reviewed this application on October 14th, 2019. We've received no public comments during the Planning Commission process, and the Planning Commission recommended approval to the City Commission, and it was forwarded to this evening, November 6th. Thank you. Yeah, so there have been some additional comments that came in today, and at the end of my presentation, I might have Katie Riggs read them out for the record, and they've been added to your dais. So the project scope is 2 things. It's clarification of existing stormwater guidelines and adoption of the new stormwater master plan. What the City Commission is looking at this evening and through this process, can the City Commission affirm that the master plan and the stormwater design guidelines meet the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan and are consistent with state land use goals? Can the City Commission affirm that the proposed amendments to the master plan and guidelines address the adequacy of city infrastructure and facilities? And can the City Commission ensure amendments do not compromise the city's protection of natural resource areas? We have a presentation by Brown and Caldwell this evening. They'll kind of talk you through the process. And before I send that, I'll hand it back to Katie Riggs to read the additional comments that will be entered in the record this evening.
So I'm not going to read the comments themselves. I'm just going to tell you who they are from. We got comments from Jesse Buss, James Nasita, Shay Spady, Paul Edgar.
It's Shaw.
oh, I'm sorry, Shaw, sorry. I don't know what I said, but, and Jonah Sanford from the, Northwest, I don't know what it is.
Environmental.
Environmental. Yes, Northwest Environmental
Something.
So those have all been added to the record.
Okay.
And you said we had those?
They just came in today.
Oh, okay.
They're on your.
Oh, they're on the computer,
Yeah.
okay, because you said they were on the dais, and I'm looking.
Sorry, on the
looking
computer
for my-
dais.
Looking for
The
my.
metaphorical electronic
Yes.
dais.
They're
Okay,
also
the
all in
electronic
your
version.
email.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Maxwell. I'm with Brown and Caldwell, and we are the city's environmental and engineering consultant that has been working on the Stormwater Master Plan. So I've been managing the project for several years, and so I'm here to give you an overview of the work that was done and some of the recommendations that we have in the plan. See if I remember how this works. So just when we're talking about the city's stormwater system, the city's stormwater system conveys runoff, rainwater, to one of the natural systems. The system is generally a gravity conveyance system of pipes, swales. There are not pump stations related to stormwater, so we're talking about just drainage. One of the major goals of the Stormwater Master Plan is to protect those natural resources, which you know are abundant in Oregon City. And we have a list here of just a few of the natural systems that we're looking at through this plan. But I also want to highlight that the master plan itself is looking at city infrastructure, and there's over 120 miles of piped conveyance systems in Oregon City. And so that's what we're really looking at, the long-term plan for maintaining, upgrading, and increasing capacity in that system. As well as the stormwater management facilities, which are things like ponds and other treatment systems that protect water quality. So planning context, kind of why we're working on this plan now, is to meet state and local regulatory requirements. The Stormwater Master Plan is the way that you manage your stormwater system, and the plan is also how the city outlines strategies to protect water quality. So when we're looking at state water quality standards, those water quality standards have come with a permit that the city operates under, and part of those permit requirements are that you have a stormwater master plan to manage your system. So this is a really important document as far as meeting your water quality state permit requirements. But also the stormwater master plan covers capital project priorities, looks at growth impacts, it talks about your operations and maintenance programs, and then outlines budget needs. It really is also, just to highlight, a high level plan. So it's looking at big picture, large priorities. Some of those day-to-day options or day-to-day activities that are going on would continue, and this plan doesn't dig into those, that level of detail. Let's see. Kind of from an evolutionary standpoint, the city does have a drainage master plan that was adopted in 1988, so it's due for an update. There have been, in the interim, there have been various drainage basin master plans and concept area plans that look at, neighborhood level projects and neighborhood level needs. But over the last several years, we've been doing the research and the evaluations to look at that citywide plan. Through that process, we spent quite a bit of time identifying problem areas. That was through both a public process and a pretty extensive work with city maintenance staff who have long-term records of where people have called in complaints and different drainage issues. And so then going out and evaluating those and doing the field work, and now we're over to the plan that we're proposing tonight. So through our work, this is kind of the big key takeaways that we wanted to bring in front of you. Our recommendations are, first of all, from a stormwater system to replace deteriorating and failing infrastructure. Oregon City has some of the oldest buried infrastructure in the state, not surprisingly, and a lot of that is conveying stormwater. There was an effort, I want to say in the 70s or 80s, to split out stormwater and sanitary sewer systems, and so some of the sanitary pipes are new, but stormwater is still flowing in those old pipes. So that's a big recommendation, is to work on that program. Upsize existing pipes to reduce flooding during storm events. Install new infrastructure in some neighborhoods that don't currently have stormwater infrastructure at all. So we have a few of those projects recommended. We have long-term recommendations to monitor and stabilize outfalls around New Canyon. We know that that's been an ongoing concern. Increase water quality treatment through targeted projects, and then continue to implement programs that monitor pipe condition and plan for replacement. That's actually an element that city staff have started working on even as we're getting to the final part of this plan because the need is so great. And so they've been doing a lot of investigation of the pipe network to identify where potential problems might be in the buried infrastructure. We're not going to go through things in detail, but just want to highlight the capital projects that are proposed in this plan cover all areas of the city. As I mentioned, it really is a citywide plan. And I want to just highlight some of the types of projects that we're recommending. So we have projects like this project is a pretty major one through the John Adams Basin area that would upsize pipes to protect against flooding, but also replace quite a bit of that aging infrastructure because we don't want to have another failure. And it would also move pipes into the right-of-way so that they're within the public system and easier to maintain.
Can you hang on 1 second?
Sure.
Where is Pebble Beach Pond? I've never heard of this.
It's actually, it is down lower southeast portion of the city where it says CIP number 6 on that map.
There's a development.
There is a development pond, yes.
Yeah, got golf course names.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Remember that that subdivision?
Yes, there you go.
I'd never heard it before, so.
There is not a Pebble Beach to go with Pebble Beach Pond, right? It's just the pond. So this is a aged infrastructure replacement and capacity project. Whenever possible, we recommend that you address multiple needs in single projects, right? Multi-objective work. This is a project example of a neighborhood around Harding that doesn't have any stormwater infrastructure, and so water is just drains through the street or actually seeps into the sanitary system, and so that is a project that is a stormwater project but will also benefit your sanitary sewer system as well. So that's adding new infrastructure. Up on Holcomb, there's quite a bit of development that's been going on up there, and so there's portions of the drainage system that are still in ditches and really need to be more formalized. So this is that type of project, also looking at that long-term capacity. So the needs are great. As we said, the last time the master plan was put together was in 1988. And so this plan really does outline a whole new set of projects. There aren't projects from the 1988 plan that we're carrying forward. They should be done by now, or the needs have changed. And so these are all new projects that are recommended, as well as some ongoing costs. The plan at this point, the next steps to this would be an SDC and rate study, and that would outline a long-term both schedule and then a funding strategy for how to pay for this work and sort of the order that things need to be done. So this at this point is a recommended list of projects, but not a specific year-by-year plan. One of the questions that came up through the Planning Commission that I wanted to address for you all is how does the master plan address the future planning areas and new development areas and those new concept areas? So the future planning areas or any new development really needs to address stormwater through their own work. So those new future development areas are not listed within that CIP list that I just put in front of you, because when new areas come in to develop, they have to put in a new stormwater system, and that new stormwater system needs to meet your current standards. So the second portion of the hearing tonight, or the projects that we're considering, is the stormwater design standards update. So there's a master plan that talks about sort of city initiated work, and then the design standards tell everyone when you're going to put in new development, what does the stormwater need to look like? And so all projects, then new projects, whether it's a public project or a private project, they funnel through the design standards, and those standards are put in place that provide water quality treatment, protect for erosion, those types of things. So that's how these two plans kind of work together. So just to touch on that, since the hearings are kind of combined tonight, the design standards clarifications that are in front of you, these are updates to the 2015 standards. So the city's current stormwater design standards are relatively new. The clarifications are fairly minor. It's basically clarifying things that have either been murky, I would say, to interpret between staff and our development community. And so trying to get those things narrowed down so everybody knows what we're, when we're reviewing projects, what to be looking for. There's also been some alignment with some of like ODOT standards so that the same requirements are in place. And then a lot of updating on acronyms and terminology where maybe some of those acronyms have changed since the standards were written in 2015. So it's not a major policy change on the design standards clarification, but it is in front of you tonight for approval. So those are the two documents that we're talking about. I'm happy to answer questions for you.
Any questions? Okay.
I guess I have one question. It's actually was something that was brought out in one of the letters. If our stormwater master plan goal, and that plan will be judged on the quality of the product that it generates in the end, how good is the water that comes out. If our goal is to be consistent with statewide land use goals, why don't we reference the, trying to look for the right document.
Goal 6?
Goal 6. Because Goal 6 is basically talks about the product, that all waste and process discharges from future development, when combined with such discharges from existing development, shall not threaten to violate applicable state or federal environmental quality statutes, rules, and standards. Do we view that statement as redundant? Because that's what we want to comply with.
Right. Yep. So actually, it's a good question. The reason that that we're presenting this plan is to comply with Goal 6. So the way that I look at that, or that my understanding is that, Goal 6 is saying we need to comply with statewide water quality standards. Those statewide water quality standards get written up as generally TMDLs, so total maximum daily loads. I'm with you. Which says how much, pollutant you can discharge into state waterways. So then, because of those limits, the city gets a permit to discharge stormwater, which you have, and that one of the requirements of that permit is to develop a stormwater master plan. So while that chain is long, this stormwater master plan is a direct connection back to meeting Goal 6. Because the whole point here is to outline your plans for water quality protection and stormwater management to meet state standards, which then meets your Goal 6 requirements.
Yeah, and the reason I ask that is that I've never been a fan of having to drill down to see the connection between documents, and that, to me, that establishes the connection. And this is how we meet, this is how we do it. The second document is how we do it, and this is why we do it.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's the reason for my question.
Anybody else?
Maybe I can also address that a little bit.
Sure.
The one thing that this stormwater master plan is one element of many documents, right? As regards to stormwater master plan, we've got our permit, our MPDS permit, which DEQ regulates, and then we've got a stormwater management plan in addition to that, which tells us how to, how much street sweeping we need to do, how much cleaning we need to do. It's really the guidebook that we use to maintain our systems. There's several ancillary documents. You mentioned the TMDL document. We've got an adopted TMDL action plan as well. We've got our hydro modification assessment plan, which tells us how to deal with incised streams and deal with those down the road. So this stormwater master plan is one of several documents. All of those documents have that overarching goal of improving water quality in compliance with Goal 6. So, I think to suggest the stormwater master plan is not in compliance with Goal 6 is mistaken.
That wasn't my suggestion. My suggestion was rather than having to drill down and see what is the relationship between Goal 6 and that, it plainly states it. And then from there on, everything else that comes, all those supporting documents are in fact in support of achieving Goal 6. That's all.
So,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yes, I would basically say that while on its face, Mr. Lewis, it does, but what the comprehensive plan talks about as well as Goal 6 is that you've got to say how you meet it. And I think that the findings need to be amended and beefed up to look at the goal and look at the guidelines and how our documents meet that. And I did not see that in there. That is what, that's my concern about it. And I did bring, not that everybody in the commission wants to read it, but I did bring some copies of Statewide Planning Goal 6, which basically specifically outlines what it is that we need to meet, and we need to say how we're meeting it. It's not enough just to submit the document and attach it and say, here you go. It's got to be outlined. We meet goal 6 because we meet this, and this. And it didn't say that.
Thank you. So, let me ask you a question. I assume you don't do this for free.
No.
And Brown and
my
Caldwell is a
We're
international or national?
we're a national firm, but I'm
Okay.
local. I
Right.
live here.
I think my point is that we pay people, consultants, experts, to do this stuff because that's what they do day in and day out. And when you start talking TMDL and all this other stuff to me, my eyes glaze over. Because I have you guys to tell me what we're doing and what we're not doing and that sort of thing. So while I appreciate the citizen comment and I read it all, the fact is that the money we pay to get this work done would be not well spent if it doesn't meet the standards and the requirements that the state's laid out. So with that, thank you for your time, and let me go back to the agenda for a second here to see where we're at. So this is a public hearing, we've had the staff report.
No, I don't,
What?
unless they want to hear from you.
I just wanted to make sure, I know John just wanted to
Well,
provide a comment.
so it feels a little bit like a precarious situation here because we've got some public comment. Not sure if we if you want us to respond to that at all
No.
today.
No.
Okay.
Okay. So I will open the public hearing. And now we're going to go to the public testimony. And I have two here, Paul Edgar and James Nasita. Mr. Edgar.
Mayor, City Commission, Paul Edgar, Oregon City. In Kenema, there's a wetland that no one ever knew about on kind of 5th and Miller Street. But really, people did know about it because this is the water that flows out of the historic Kenema Waterworks, which is not inventory whatsoever. And on a time back, a few years back, we had a major water event, and John Lewis was right on Coffee Creek, right across from my house, and I was trying to help him make sure he didn't get hurt. Where Coffee Creek, when the high rain deal flooded over, went through my yard, washed out a bridge in my property, and down on where the Kenema Waterworks is, the springs got so activated that it flows down from there and it flooded over Miller Street right at that same time because the streams, there's a pipe that was put in illegally less than 20 years ago to drain stormwater and water from the wetlands. And it goes all the way down to Apperson, and then it came out into a pipe where the city took and put a new pipe up to there to collect that water, knowing that the water was coming through there. But this pipe was put in without permits, cutting across multiple right-of-ways, streets, and alleyways. And everyone looked the other direction. How? Why? I don't know. I can't tell that. But no one ever took a step to do anything or correct anything. So this is where stormwater becomes so great that it overflows the creeks, and we're not really even compensating for it. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to come here and talk about it, because there's a lot more to this issue that needs to be thought out and to be quantified, because somewhere, somehow, we're not doing what we should be doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nasita.
Good evening, James Nasita, Oregon City. I've submitted some supplementary comments on Goal 2 and on Goal 5. That I'll just rely on those written comments, but I'll just have some supplementary oral comments too. There's a lot of good work in these design standards and stormwater master plan, both on the part of the consultant and on the part of Public Works Department. I was hoping that if the commission is willing to take some time on this, that we might be able to consider refining the plan to include some projects that use stormwater as a resource, as an amenity. And I'll give two examples, but are probably a lot more than that. One is, I would hope that at some point the city might consider acquiring the Kenema Waterworks. It is a very historic site, and it could be an amenity as part of the Kenema McLaughlin Trail Plan. If you've never been to the Kenema Waterworks, I recommend that you take a look at it. Another opportunity that is city-owned property is the creek that's in a pipe that runs through Lower Waterboard Park out of the hillside, and then it falls over the cliff into the back of the Center Street Public Works operations area. That could be a little nifty, because it's not very big. It doesn't really flood. It's got a pretty moderate flow level, so I don't think it would be a hazard to daylight that stream. And if it were in the CIP or in the plan, perhaps a group like the Oregon City Parks Foundation could use that official plan as a basis to do fundraising and grant writing. So that's what I hope the commission would consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Nobody else? Then I'm going to close the public hearing, and we can deliberate as we choose here. Is anybody wishing to speak?
I just had a question for our esteemed Public Works Director, Mr. Lewis. The idea that Mr. Nacita talked about, is that something that we have considered at all? I mean, maybe not that specific example, but using stormwater as an amenity.
Definitely, we generally feel like stormwater is an amenity, so we try to open our streams up when we can and utilize them as we can to both at the source, where we can clean that water and make sure it's clean from that point forward, to other streams where maybe we would be interested in opening up that corridor more. But I haven't thought much about the idea of the stormwater master plan, including the Kenema Waterworks as a project, nor the opening of the Waterboard Park stream. Those two projects specifically I had not considered for this plan.
Well, I know we have a lot of, storm drainage ponds that do, I know several of them with the plantings that are around them have kind of become sort of a de facto, a little bit of a environmental wetland, because I've heard frogs and sorts of other critters as you go by them, particularly in the late evening. So I think there's, to me, in a way, even though they're somewhat fenced because we don't want people in them and drowning. Yes, exactly. We don't want people in them, but they do kind of become an amenity in a neighborhood. So it seems to me that something like the Kenema Waterworks could be something similar that should be considered.
Anybody else? Yes. Commissioner Wallace-Smith.
Mr. Lewis, can you take a moment to try to address the public comment from Northwest Environmental, where their assertion is that the plan does not hold developers to state's water quality requirements? I understand there's assertions about Goal 6, but they go a little bit further, and not just saying we're not being compliant with Goal 6, but they're saying we're not even being explicit with developers.
Is that for the master plan, or is that for the next one on the design standards?
Well, we're definitely
I think it's
talking
in
about
both.
But, okay.
Yeah.
So.
Did you have a chance to read their public comment?
I did, and I went and left that letter on my desk. But the takeaway that I had from that was that they felt like the master plan on its own and the stormwater standards, those two documents didn't do enough to preserve water quality in Oregon City. And so they didn't articulate what else they thought needed to be done. I don't think it was things like, the Kenema Waterworks or the opening of the Waterboard Park. They may have other ideas about how we should better treat stormwater in Oregon City. And what I struggle with that is that we know what the region is doing with their stormwater, and through other agencies and their stormwater master plans, we're trying to model all the good things that those other agencies are doing, and still do that in a way that provides us with a facility that we can maintain. So I think that environmental group is an advocacy group for the highest level of stormwater treatment that could ever be attained. But I don't know that. They didn't articulate what those things were. It'd be interesting to follow up with that letter to figure out what kinds of measures they might have in mind. But we feel like, we're doing a lot. If you recall from our stormwater standards, we're doing a lot with swales. We're allowing low impact development standards. We're allowing private developed stormwater management systems with filters in them, those kind of things. Those kind of things we're allowing the development community to propose, and in places where it makes sense, we would consider those. That's a far cry from where we've been in the past, right? In the past, we've pretty much been with things like water quality manholes that might be right in front of one of those ponds that Denise is talking about. And then the ponds in a lot of ways have become, because of the way we've been managing them, become more more than just a detention facility. There's lots of treatment opportunities in those facilities as well. That during most, low-level rain events, they do a pretty good job with that. So, and again, just knowing how several of our neighboring agencies work with stormwater, Oregon City is leading the charge in a lot of ways there. In fact, we took a standard that the county had done a really good job with, but was reluctant to adopt because of the development impacts of that plan. And we picked that ball up and we worked with Brown and Caldwell to enhance that. We worked together with the city of Wilsonville and really kind of looked at things that made sense for the build community. And I will tell you, the development community still struggles with some of the facilities that we put in, because they're not easy to build, and they're not always placed well in a typical residential neighborhood. But we're doing a really good. Well, I think we're holding to a very high standard, but we're willing to hear. To me, one of the things that's unfortunate about some of this is this plan has been on the commission goals since 2015. Right? We've struggled to deliver this project mostly because of our own staffing load and staffing changes there. But we've been working on this plan for years now. And there's been a variety of public meetings associated with this. And we just don't see a lot of public comments when it comes to stormwater master planning. And I agree that's unfortunate. But we're there to listen, and we're definitely willing. And so, just getting input is great. I'm frustrated with the timing of it. Yeah. And so, maybe there's some solutions there that but we'd also like to get stormwater standards adopted, because without them, we're working at what I think is a disadvantage. The development community may have an easier time doing what they're doing, or maybe easier is not the better descriptor. They're likely to be able to develop under a lesser standard. And that's the same with the stormwater master plan. Until we get a master plan, we really can't look at a financial strategy and start finding ways to fund some of these important capital improvement projects. So,
right. I guess I want to revisit one where they're being very specific about our plan not requiring a condition of approval for future development, essentially that to obtain a water discharge permit, which is, according to them, required by state statute. So I don't know. Can you comment?
Sorry.
You want to comment?
We're talking about the item B of
the NEDC letter. And I want to point out that the obligations set out in this ORS 468B that they're citing to, that prohibits discharges in exceedance of the permit authorizations, is an obligation that is freestanding. So you can violate the statute, right? By discharging, right? So this argument was brought up in the Nacita versus Oregon City case, the historic properties appeal. And what Luba said was, and the argument that was presented by Mr. Nacita in that case was that this did provide an independent obligation that had to be addressed. And what Luba said was that it didn't need to be addressed. In fact, that this was an independent obligation, that a person can violate the statute and not be in violation of Goal 6 or otherwise in violation of the city's comprehensive plan, because the city comprehensive plan does not address this. So I believe that the historic properties decision addresses this concern, and I am fully with Commissioner McGriff that we need to draft some findings that address this, but I think we can get there.
So you're saying that the statute, it stands alone and we don't have to make it a condition of approval?
Correct.
Okay, anybody else? I have one comment, and that is I've been doing this for 25 some odd years in different capacities in elected life. And the one thing I have noticed over and over and over again is there are certain advocacy groups that no matter what it is you do, they're going to find a reason to pick at you about it. South Fork Water Board has been dealing with the organization Water Watch for close to 12 years on our water rights, which go back to way back to the early 1900s. So while I take the testimony at face value, I also am once again disappointed by the fact that we have all of this process leading up to this point, and it's not until the 11th hour and the 59th minute that we get all this written testimony in, and they want to delay the process again. And it's particularly applicable to a couple of people who wait until the last minute and then send us 80, 100, 150 pages of stuff when we don't even have time to read it before we have the commission meeting. So with that said, I hear no more discussion.
Given the additional information that was submitted tonight, some in writing that we haven't read over here yet, and the concerns about the findings for Goal 6, staff requests a continuance to December 18th.
I'd so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? Call a roll.
Okay. Bear with me for just a second. I'm sorry. A little behind on this one.
Just to be clear, the record will remain open during this interim period. So although we've closed the public testimony portion tonight, the record is open and additional testimony can come in. We love to get it before the last day before the hearing, but I understand that's beyond our control.
Okay, call roll.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Rachel Law Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Mayor Dan Holler.
Aye. We're going to take 7 minutes and we'll come back and do the next one.
Do we need to do 6B?
I said we're going to take 7 minutes. We're going to come back and do the next one.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know which next one we were talking about.
While ago. I'll give him one more minute.
I thought we already did this.
All right, we'll be back to order. So we're at PC 19-116, first reading of ordinance number 19-1015, adopting Public Works stormwater and drainage design standards. Ms. Turway.
Thank you very much. As we previously discussed, this item is related to the last item, which is a stormwater master plan. What we'd like to do is enter all the written comments that were received through the last item into the record for this item. Staff has no further presentation. We recommend that you accept public testimony and continue this item to December 18th.
Okay. Can you clear your request to speak?
Oh, I'm not sure why it's there.
Did we say December
Okay,
18th or
thank you.
November 18th?
Sorry. December.
Oh, okay.
It's just ongoing.
Okay, so at this point, I'll open the public hearing. I see we have one commenter, Mr. Ncita.
My other ones took care of it.
Can you come up, please? So,
James Nacita, Oregon City, I'll just incorporate by reference my comments.
okay, so I have a
At the
comment
last
for you if
agenda.
you'd like to sit down for a second.
Well, thank you, sir.
Sir? So the city is offering you an opportunity to sit down with staff. Okay, then.
Discussion over.
What I would like Ms. Richter and Mr. Conkle to do is send a letter to both Mr. Cita and Mr. Bust to see if they would be willing to sit down with staff and discuss their objections prior to the next hearing.
Understood.
Okay. Hearing, seeing no other public comment, is there any further discussion from the commission?
I move to continue.
Second.
Moved and seconded to continue to date certain of December 18th. Further discussion? Call a roll, please.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Rachel Law Smith. Aye. Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Mayor Dan Holliday.
Aye. So we're on to general business. First, 19-611, first reading of ordinance number 19-1011, adding chapter 8.26 business food waste requirements to the Oregon City Municipal Code. Mr. Lewis.
Oh, isn't this an entertaining evening? We've got yet another rousing PowerPoint show from Public Works.
It's not a rerun, is it?
I love the Public Works PowerPoints.
Thank you for that.
It's not a rerun, is it?
At least there's one.
1 out of 4. 1 out of 5.
All right.
Okay, let's move on.
We want to talk about food waste, and this is a topic that, yes, has been in front of you. Has been in front of you before. We think we've got all the pieces here, and you have a pretty extensive package of attachments as well. A couple of letters from folks that I think are meaningful in this case, one from B&B Leasing and one from Metro. So this is relatively short, but I wanted to go through it. And one thing that I would say is, I was thinking about this slide before. You know, state in our case, the state is kind of the designating authority over us, but you know, they take some direction from EPA. So just kind of looking at EPA's latest thoughts on food waste, my suspicion is the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality also was kind of directed on some of these food waste requirements. But, you know, they are in Oregon the overlying agency that designate this. I think Metro has done a good job implementing that policy and trying to get to that goal. And you know, with that, as a partner with Clackamas County and Oregon City, we would feel like we can get there, and we hope you do too. So there's just a couple of slides here about food waste and the kind of hierarchy about how we deal with food waste. So you know, obviously we want to use food waste in many ways, and at the end of the day, if we can't use it, compost it, and preferably avoid a landfill with that. So really it's trying to prevent waste, but if we have it, collecting it and using it in positive ways. Metro presented this slide already once before, but for me it was pretty moving in the amount of long haul trucks that take this waste. I don't remember the exact mileage, but it was around 150 miles to dispose of food waste. And they're collecting it now. They're just collecting it in ways that are mixed with all these other waste streams. So if we could remove that from the waste stream or separate that from the waste stream, it'd be advantageous for a lot of reasons. So one of the things that was that the commission asked about and staff has taken a stab at is some of the costs associated with this. So, you know, we've put a lot of time into Dante Posadas, who's in the audience, has spent a lot of time. I've spent a lot of time just trying to take this regulation and bring it before you, get it in a form that you could approve. And so I asked Dante to put together some numbers and hours associated with his time and my time and others who have been involved. And so he's estimated that cost at just under $5,000 as cost just to get this program implemented. Those are city costs. He also came up with an annual cost, because that was another question that came from the commission. And you know, when I saw this number, I thought, really? And that's, you know, $1,900 seems like a lot, given how we've had to deal with other recycling issues in Oregon City. And he said, well, that includes a fair amount of hours for code enforcement. And whether we use it, we haven't had to use code enforcement for recycling. So, you know, I guess we've got a placeholder there. We wanted to get you a number. We think it's a number that's justified in trying to provide you an estimate, a conservative estimate, but I would hope that we wouldn't have a lot of code enforcement time associated with that. So just, there's a couple of numbers that you may, that you had asked for, and we were trying to give you a realistic number on, and those are based on hourly rates for key employees. Again, some of the benefits, I think, for the program are the fact that Metro is funding 2 Clackamas County employees to help with on-site assistance to help roll this program out. They're also covering the cost of 50% of any interior collection containers for businesses. And then this access to service payment to haulers is, we think, a pretty big deal, because it helps to subsidize that extra hauling time that it takes in addition to what our hauler does now. If they have to drive more miles and spend more time in traffic to get it to a different facility that accepts this, since our last meeting, they've been able to confirm that there is a hauler that's closer. Actually, B&B Leasing's been talking to them at WRI. So they've got a much clearer understanding of how they're going to dispose of that material. And so that access to service payments is helpful and important, I think, to the success of this program. And that dollar amount may change depending on if a new facility comes available, but there's definitely provisions in the code for that to be reviewed and revised and updated as needed. You've seen this slide before. Really, I think the last two columns are the ones that are most applicable, or we think are most applicable. So we think the model where you're assessing all the businesses for a rate so that we're not just loading up those that are food producers, but assessing a charge across all of those. I think there's, or I know there is, right now our plan is, again, these are estimates based on numbers that we've put together with the county and Metro. But in many agencies, there hasn't necessarily been a rate effect. So we'd love to get there. We just also want to be conservative in our estimates as well. So we also spent some time with Oregon City Garbage, and we tried to work with them, and they did some work as well in terms of trying to figure out the hauling routes and who would accept this, what that might mean for them in terms of turnaround times, and how they would work with that service provider. So they've met specifically with Republic Services in Wilsonville and have a much clearer understanding of how that's going to work. What the estimated tonnages are. We have done work with Metro. Again, there's kind of a educated guess on how much tonnage we're really going to collect, and or how much is going to be collected and hauled. So we're still working on that, and that's part of the reason why BNB or Oregon City Garbage has suggested that we continue figuring this out over the next few months with a July 2020 rate review. We'll probably bring that to you in April, because we should know a lot more about that, those costs, and how much product is actually being hauled. And again, we've heard, and in the conversation in the letter we got from Oregon City Garbage, that they're interested in compliance with state law and any local laws associated with that as well. There's several other agencies that are on board currently, and others that are doing more volunteer programs. There's a few that aren't, but they also seem to be in a process similar to ours, where they're scrutinizing these requirements and making sure they fully understand the implications of those. And so I think I haven't gotten an update on what those agencies that aren't doing collection services, but I know that there's been some conversations between Dante and some of those others about their questions and concerns and wanting to know how we're doing with it. And with that, it's open to questions. We do have representatives from Clackamas County and Metro here, and Oregon City Garbage. We didn't have specific discussion points for them, but if you have questions that are that technical, they would be happy, I'm sure, to come up and ask.
Questions, anybody? Donnie, you have anything you want to say?
We have all the information here.
Okay. If there's no questions, is there a motion?
I'd like to move first reading of ordinance number 191011 regarding business food waste requirements to the Oregon City Municipal Code.
I'll second.
Movement. What?
Comment.
Go ahead.
So I appreciate staff's work on this. When anybody comes to this commission, our expectation is we get answers to the questions we ask, and when we don't, that's a problem. And I think we hadn't got all the answers to our questions, and I feel a little bit more comfortable with it tonight. However, the threatening letter that was sent to us is just one of those ridiculous things that frustrate me. All you have to do is answer the questions we ask. How did we respond to that letter, by the way?
I don't think we did.
We didn't. So what are the repercussions? Well, it's in their packet. Did we not read the letter?
I got the whole packet.
I read it.
I read it.
I'll comment on it.
Go ahead.
So I want to know what our response was to it.
I don't think.
Well, we haven't sent a written response, but again, we have as staff talked to them to, make sure we understood all the elements of that. But yeah, we haven't responded with a written official response from the city.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
We'll do it verbally.
You talking about the non-compliance letter?
Well, first, the estimated costs going forward, we'll never know if that's accurate or not, because we're not going to accumulate costs. And I know somebody I admire, I don't really like setting up these specific accounts, but I wish we would see how much it's going to cost us going forward and charge time to the administration of this account. And I think about these, and I know we don't like doing it, but the second thing is, boy, this is the velvet hammer without any velvet on it. And I mean, if you read this letter, it says that after we voted not to consider this option, as a result, Metro will withhold the city's share of associated program implementation funding assistance, and the city's solid waste hauler will not be eligible for any access to service payments. Should non-compliance continue, funding for other programs may also be withheld, or Metro may seek any remedy under applicable state law. That's a partnership when somebody tells you, here's your options, and we're going to drop the hammer on you. So.
And it's our staff doing the work tonight. And I honestly don't buy it's only costing us $4,500 worth of staff time to deal with this.
Well, I don't buy it's going to cost us $1,900 per annum to keep administering it either, but
Any further questions or comments?
No, I made my comment.
Okay. I'm gonna make one.
Quick question. So do we need to add in anything, Carrie or Tony, regarding the request for to do the rate review in July 2020? Or are we just making the assumption that that's part of it?
I don't think we need to add anything. I think that's what we're proposing. If it's approved, that's what we'll do.
I just want to make sure.
Okay. So I'm gonna make one final comment, and that is that my mom had a saying that came from my grandmother, and I assume farther back in our line than that, get more flies with honey than you with vinegar. And it seems like Metro has this idea that somehow they are the supreme beings in the state and can do and say whatever they want, and we're just supposed to nod our heads and go, I'd say. And it's offensive to me, it really is. That letter was uncalled for and unnecessary. When this came to us the first time, there were a lot of unanswered questions. I'm not sure that I necessarily believe all of the answers that we got tonight. So with that.
And those answers didn't come from Metro.
So with that, I will, if there's no further comment.
I'd like to comment.
Go ahead.
So my understanding is that when we heard this back in the summer, Metro had not sent a letter to folks because we were in the process of working on it and they thought that we were going to pass it. There was a deadline given to cities within Metro in which they were supposed to pass this food waste requirement in all the cities, and we didn't do it. A lot of other cities did, and we didn't.
But there's a lot that still haven't, too.
And they didn't, the questions weren't answered. We don't have to do it until we get our answers.
Yes, but we have consequences if we don't abide by that. And I would take pause in saying that our staff are the only ones working on it. They've given us 3 presentations on this where they've worked with Metro over and over and over in a partnership, trying to get all the answers, trying to provide answers. So I just think we're blowing the letter out of proportion from Metro's stance. there's a compliance, we're not complying, and it's their way of letting us know this is what happens. If they were to start doing stuff without telling us, we'd be really upset about it. This was their way of saying, here's what's happening, you were supposed to do it, this is what will happen, here's the dates, here's, just laying that all out. I mean, you can say we're partners, we are partners, but at the end of the day, there's a transaction going on here, and there are legal regulations and requirements that we have to abide by as part of being part of Metro. I'll just leave it at that. I think it's a good program. Yes, there are questions. I think Metro is doing everything they can to provide reimbursement fees and to work with the haulers and to work with B&B to try to make this partnership work. And we've gotten no complaints from B&B. They've repeatedly come back to us and said, we're working on it. We're working with Metro. We're coming, they provided letters. So I don't understand why this commission is being such an obstruction to something where everybody else seems to be working really well on this program, and we're the ones holding it up.
I'll answer. Let me answer
The issue isn't B&B.
Go Commissioner O'Donnell, and then we're going to have the vote.
Those of us who initially voted against it, our goal was to protect our community because at some point businesses incur costs, and those costs have to be passed along to consumers. And we just wanted to try to make sure that our vendors was being treated fairly and our citizens were treated fairly. And now our backs are to the wall, so here it is, and that's all I have to say.
Okay, call a roll.
Can I read it by title?
Sorry, that's right.
Ordinance number 19-1011, an ordinance of the City of Oregon City amending the Oregon City Municipal Code by adding a new chapter 8.26 business food waste requirements.
Commissioner Rocky Smith?
No.
Commissioner Denise McGriff?
Aye.
Commissioner Rachel Lyle Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell?
Aye.
Mayor Dan Holliday?
Well, thank goodness Frank voted yes.
Yeah, and I
because if you had voted no, it would have forced me to vote yes, and I'm voting no purely on a philosophical standpoint that Metro continues to metastasize in the region and take over more and more programs they were never entitled to do inside their original charter. And a prime example is this is now Metro's into housing. It terrifies me, the fact that we're going to lose total control over the oldest city west of the Rocky Mountains because of Metro. So I will vote no, and the motion carries. Moving on, we are at 19-614, second reading of ordinance number 19-1016, amending the Oregon City Municipal Code, Chapter 12.32, Heritage Trees. Ms. Turway.
Thank you very much. I am here to answer any questions that you have and just recommend approval.
What was that? Sorry.
Second reading, we have nothing else to add.
Oh, okay. I was in somewhere else. Is there an ordinance or a motion?
Sure. I'll move to approve the second reading of ordinance number 19-1016.
Is there a second? Oh.
Second.
Denise is not here.
None of us walked out.
All right.
It's been moved in second.
Call Ms. Richter.
Ordinance number 19-1016, an ordinance of the City of Oregon City amending the Oregon City Municipal Code, Chapter 12.32, Heritage Trees.
Call a roll.
Commissioner Rocky Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff?
Aye.
Commissioner Rachel Lyle Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell?
Aye.
Mayor Dan Holliday?
Aye. PC 19-117, Citizen Involvement Committee request to amend procedures and restore bylaws. Mr. Conkle.
Sorry. Thank you, Mayor, evening commissioners. The Citizen Involvement Committee has requested to amend the procedures and restore the bylaws and recommend changes to Chapter 2.3 of the Oregon City Municipal Code and associated bylaws. On October 7th, the Citizen Involvement Committee meeting, Mr. LaSalle presented concerns and recommendations for changes to the CIC. Restore voting rights to both neighborhood CIC representatives. As you may recall, we used to have 2 voting members from each neighborhood association. That was reduced to 1. Restore the bylaws from the CIC. and restore the responsibility of the agenda to the CIC chair. The CIC unanimously voted to send this request to the City Commission at the next available meeting. If approved, the CIC will prepare a recommendation of changes to Chapter 2.30 of the Oregon City Municipal Code and bylaws, including the items identified above and other changes as needed. This work will be presented to the City Commission at a work session prior to approval. Ms. Wilhite, the chair of the Citizen Involvement Committee, is here as well tonight. It'd be great if we could hear testimony from her.
Okay, I assume Mr. Gifford left?
Yes.
Okay, so you can take Gifford off the list. Ms. Wilhite, come on up.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Amy Wilhite, citizen of Oregon City and chair of the Citizen Involvement Commission. I wrote a letter, I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but I would just like to read it real quick.
Sure.
For those that are here, in 2015, the Citizen Involvement Council was restructured, renamed, and codified and put under the direction of the Community Development Director. It was made clear at the February 2015 CIC meeting that if these changes did not happen, the CIC would no longer have staff support and would not be allowed to continue. At this time, the CIC were reminded that they serve at the discretion of the City Commission, and that is who gives them their roles and purposes to fulfill. They were given a framework to clarify and provide direction moving forward. I attached the memo from Tony at that time was the Community Development Director. We were challenged by the Community Development Director to improve communication and coordination between the city, the CIC, the neighborhood associations, and the general public. At the time of that change, all 12 neighborhoods were once again active and participating in the CIC. It took me 2 years to get Caulfield back. They got their feelings hurt. So at that time, we were all there. Each neighborhood had up to 2 voting members, and the bylaws had just been revised and were in the process of being adopted, and I attached those bylaws. The CIC had recognized that changes needed to happen and had taken steps to make this change. There were some accusations, there was some turmoil going on. We recognized it, and we felt that we were dealing with it. The abrupt restructuring put a halt to any of such plans and set the CIC on a new course. We now find ourselves 5 years later asking, have we accomplished the goals of this change as were given to us by the Community Development Director? Have we increased public participation? Have we doubled attendance? Have professionals been brought in as a supplement to staff to invest, expand, and improve citizen participation in the land use process? Have we been given the tools and expertise needed to succeed? At the time of this letter, the most recent neighborhood meeting was October, and out of that time, 2 neighborhoods were completely inactive. One chair resigned at that meeting and alerted us to the fact that one more chair was soon on their way out. They're still working that out, trying to tweak that. That was Hill and Dale and Tower Vista. They might reverse and still be operative. Neither of those neighborhoods at the time anticipated finding replacements. Only 8 of the 12 neighborhoods have been sending representatives to the CIC meetings, and those are not consistent. At our November meeting, we had 7 in attendance, 7 members, 5 neighborhoods represented. A few concerned citizens, including current and past CIC members, met to discuss their concerns with the current status of the CIC and proposed the 3 changes that Tony mentioned in hopes to turn the tides back towards increased citizen involvement. These 3 suggestions, again, were brought to the CIC in October. The reason for restoring the vote to the neighborhood is to give 2 per neighborhood, is to give every member equal opportunity. When you have a alternate and a primary, the alternates feel, why should I even come? They're not coming. And we just believe that if someone's a member of the CIC, it just should be on all equal footing. We don't need primaries and we don't need alternates. That was a big source of contention when the CIC was codified, and I think we can see that it hasn't worked. Restoring the bylaws. Currently, 6 of the 8 city boards and commissions use bylaws, and we would like to see us be able to return to that to get us back on course. I think it gives a little more clarity than just what's written in the code. Restoring the responsibility of the agenda to the CIC chair. Christina's been great to work with. We try to coordinate, but it has made the appearance that
people aren't allowed to put something on the agenda. It sends the appearance that the agenda is just given to us by staff, and so it's a staff-led meeting instead of a citizens-led meeting. We want to set the tone that the meetings are citizen-driven and everyone's input is encouraged. Again, if approved, we would return to the CIC to work on the wording for the bylaws and the code changes. We do want to be clear that we appreciate the planning department's support and the work that they do with the CIC. We believe we have many of the same goals and desires and know that they work hard to achieve citizen involvement. When they came in February of 2015, before I introduced Tony to talk about the changes, I referenced a book called Who Moved My Cheese? I don't know if you know that book, but I talked about the cheese has been moved. We can accept it. You know, we can fight it. We fought. But we finally got to a place where we thought we could work with our cheese. Well, our cheese is now moldy and not feta or blue cheese that's acceptable. I think we're in a yucky, moldy state. And that is why we've come before you tonight.
You know that Rogue Creamery just won a major award for the blue cheese, so moldy cheese is Oregon's #1.
Questions, comments?
I'm curious as to something, and I'm aware of everything that's going on there. Used to have one vote per neighborhood, either the primary or the secondary. Now you're gonna have 2 people attending. How are you gonna figure your quorum?
Before the city codified the CIC, it was up to 2 voting per neighborhood.
So if you had 10 neighborhoods, you don't need the better part of 20 people there. You can have 11 there and you're going to conduct a meeting.
Well, we conduct a meeting whether we have a quorum. It's just you can't vote on anything. Okay. You couldn't vote on a motion.
He's asking how many people would be a quorum. Remember when we had 2 members from each neighborhood association?
Yeah, what's a quorum to that?
So we haven't gotten into the nitty gritty. The things that are voted on are usually we vote on things to support and bring to bring before you, or do we want to support this neighborhood in this action? And so it's not as like quasi judicial as you have your.
Okay. Have the representatives always been selected by the neighborhoods?
Always. This is the first when the city codified it. Mayor Holliday was the first mayor that started appointing members to this.
So now it's going to return to the neighborhoods?
No, I don't know that he's willing to give that up. The compromise we made with this, that the neighborhoods got to send the recommendation to the mayor, and then he nominated.
I remember the original
And there's only been
so I wanted to ask.
a very few, maybe 1 or 2 occasions where I have not appointed the members that you sent me.
Yeah.
One was a guy that cut down trees in Waterworth Park.
Okay.
I wanted to make a comment, please, if I may.
Go ahead.
As a former member of the CIC representing my neighborhood association, I've been both the primary representative and I've also been the alternate. I really feel very strongly that the neighborhood associations need to they should be able to select their own representatives. They know who they want to represent them, and that should be that. In addition, I support what you are proposing because the way the CIC worked prior to the changes, it worked very well. It wasn't broken.
It was.
Well, I'm saying that I don't think it was, so that's just my opinion because I was on that board. I think it worked very well, and I think that we have done an excellent job in promoting citizen involvement, but we could be doing more. And I think that the way things are running now, it has not been as supportive as it could be. But I would like to make a little suggestion, rather than the agenda being totally set by the chair, you or whoever else it is that the committee always made recommendations for what they wanted on the agenda. And then the chair moved forward with getting this or that or the other thing. So I still think it should be more, it should be the chair with the consensus of the group deciding what's going to be on the agenda, because maybe there's one issue that's more important this month than it was last month, and you guys can move things around. But we are very lucky to have the committed people that we have currently that are serving on the CIC, and I think it's very worthwhile that we continue to have it, and I urge my fellow commissioners to support their recommendations.
Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the CIC liaison for the commission, I was at the meeting where Bob LaSalle gave his presentation to the CIC, and I heard the discussion by CIC. I would agree. I think, I've been attending these meetings since January. They've struggled to have good attendance. I have no problems if the CIC wants to take charge and work on their agendas, they should be given the ability to do that. And as far as I know, the city doesn't have a problem doing that, and ideally, there's a collaboration and a partnership anyway. And I think there's a good relationship there. Christina is the staff liaison, and there seems to be a good relationship there. So I would expect that to continue. I do agree with Commissioner McGriff that I think if the neighborhoods appoint, if they decide who they want to represent their neighborhood, I would like those to be the people that represent the neighborhood, as long as they meet our bare minimum requirements of like they live in the neighborhood. There's a few criteria there that they actually live in the neighborhood they represent or have a business there. I believe we recently had that come up where someone didn't fall into that criteria, and so therefore they weren't appointed. But anyway, I support the CIC and what they're doing, and I'm not sure why we wouldn't want them to have bylaws. So I think this just gives you the go forth and see what you're going to bring back to us, and we'll have further discussion on it. But we need to support our neighborhoods. We have more and more neighborhoods that are becoming inactive, and I would like for us, I think the city needs to consider how we encourage neighborhood participation and outreach, to our neighbors, and I think we're going to revisit it all with Goal 1, which obviously will be a good conversation in itself. So it will all come back around for more conversation. So good work.
Commissioner O'Donnell, you got anything?
Let's see how it works.
I'm willing to have the staff and CIC have the discussion and bring us back something. But I want to clear the air in the fact that in 2015, when I was first mayor, the first CIC meeting I went to, I was called a liar in public by the chair, who happened to be you, and we got through that.
If I remember, I clarified that you had been lied to, and I stand behind that today. The CIC was not broken. We were blamed for things that people who weren't even members of the CIC did.
Okay.
We'll agree to disagree forever.
In the meantime, while I'm willing to do that, I do think that at the point in time, when I was watching the CIC and the functionality of the CIC, I do feel it was broken. The CIC was trying to act as a de facto city commission, bringing issues forward that really weren't coming from neighborhoods. They were coming from individual activists within a particular neighborhood. But I'm happy to let staff and you guys see if you can work something out. Is there a motion?
I would like to move that we forward to staff the recommendations from the CIC, that the draft bylaws be amended, and that they bring back to us for review and approval.
Second. Moved and seconded. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Rachel L. Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Mayor Dan Holliday.
Aye.
Thank you.
Moving on. 19-624 Memorandum of Understanding between Downtown Oregon City Association and City of Oregon City for monetary contribution. Mr. Conkle.
Thank you, Mayor. Downtown Oregon City Association, organized in 2009 as a 501c3 nonprofit organization, is a nationally accredited award-winning Oregon Main Street program. DOCA's mission is to build community and cultivate commerce in Oregon City's historic downtown by promoting tourism, supporting economic development, attracting new business, and expansion and success of existing businesses. The proposed Memorandum of Understanding outlines the anticipated scope of work that DOCA will be expected to achieve, and the resources provided by the city will allow DOCA to maintain and grow the activation, preservation, and economic stability of downtown Oregon City. One of the tasks that the Commission directed staff to work on was to come up with some type of a memorandum of understanding with DOCA Historically, we've made a financial commitment, monetary commitment to the organization on a yearly basis. When we started the program and the relationship with the Downtown Oregon City Association, we had a memorandum of understanding that we were working under. Through the years, we just, that didn't get extended and we didn't have one. So we're bringing this back as directed by the commission. The contribution would be $60,000 annually for 2 years, and DOCA will match the city's contribution at 100% per year with funds not from city sources. We've also identified deliverables that DOCA and the city have worked through and had tried to identify specific deliverables that they'll be providing and benefits to downtown, Main Street, and Oregon City in general, as it relates to activating downtown, providing events, assisting the city with projects that we're working on, having the city as a partner in some of the projects that they're working on, promoting Travel Oregon City on the information that they're putting out. So really trying to strengthen that collaboration and showing with deliverables what our investment is paying for and will be utilized for. DOCA, during the current budget adoption process, the City Commission did approve this as funding, so it is in the budget already for the biennium. So this money is allocated through the general fund and is available. We have representatives from the Downtown Oregon City Association here tonight that would also like to make a brief presentation, and I'd be happy to answer questions either before or after that. Staff is recommending approval of the memorandum of understanding.
On up.
I don't know which pile this goes in.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. I'm Zach Stokes of Oregon City, and I'm the chair of the DOCA Board of Directors. We have been working regularly with staff on the Memorandum of Understanding to continue to advance the partnership between DOCA and the city. This is Liz Hannum, and she's our executive director. And
I've been working really hard for the last year with Lori Bell. We've worked with the state Main Street program and gotten recommendations from them based on other communities' MOUs to make sure that we're in line with what other cities are doing with their Main Street programs. And we've actually gone a little bit beyond that in terms of the 100% match. Most cities don't require that. So we're trying to put our best foot forward for this. And we're really excited to have those measurable deliverables. We feel like we've worked really hard to build downtown, and we're excited to be able to share that with you on a regular basis. Part of the agreement is that we present to you a report twice a year. So you're actually hearing what we're doing on a regular basis, as opposed to a couple years here and there. So we're very excited to move this forward.
Commissioner Lussman.
Thank you. So to dive right into the MOU, I assume this is going to be the only legal contractual document between us, right?
Yes.
So I'm surprised that we are providing funds upfront at the start of the year in a lump sum payment. I mean, for most contractual negotiations, that's not typically done. Is that typical for this agreement in the past?
It has been it's been how we've operated in the past. So historically, when the Economic Improvement District was in place, the city collected those funds. And then on July 1st, we would pass those funds through as part of the Economic Improvement District. And then we also put in the city's funds at that same time. So it's a past practice that we've historically had. And we were proposing to continue that moving forward.
Okay, well, if other commissioners don't have any issues with that, I'll let that go. But, and so I guess my only comment, I assume, Mr. Parno, you had a hand in drafting the MOU. So maybe my question's to you on the administration section number 6. It talks about the termination of the agreement. And the only thing that I feel like is missing is some statement where since we're providing money up front, if there is termination, that we get a reimbursement for, that's prorated based on the time that's elapsed in the fiscal year or something, since we would have already given them $60,000, which to me is not customary in contractual agreements. So I feel like we at least need to have a sentence that protects the city's money or our residents' money. So that's my only comment.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Well, I guess I've done a lot of contracts too, and I look at it and I'm saying, and I've been critical of DOCA, although DOCA has done a lot of good things. So I'll temper that both statements. I'm surprised there's not a paragraph in there that says non-performance, penalties, and review. And before I give you the second year, I look at what you did. Did you do everything you needed the first year? And if you didn't, there's a non-performance penalty. And that's just a thing of clarity, which is not in there anywhere. So I would, if it were me, I would have put in one more thing that says non-performance, penalties, and annual review. And then it would have been the second fund, in keeping with your statement, the second year's funding would have been contingent upon you did everything you're supposed to do the first year.
Anybody else?
If you're going to do your job, you shouldn't have any fear of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, these are being nitpicky about the contractual language. It's not anything about the work. I think the work is great, and I support it, and I think it's really good. It's more of, I feel like my job's to protect the city and to protect the money that we spend, and therefore that's part of looking at this MOU.
Well, so I will support moving forward with this, but you're still going to run up against a philosophy of mine that I've had for a long, long time, and that is that this is a private organization, and that the city should help private organizations get started for 2 or 3 years, but should not be a continuing
Source of funding.
funding. We don't fund the Chamber of Commerce. We don't fund the Lions Club. We don't fund the Elks Club. We don't, there's a lot of good folks out there doing good work that we don't give taxpayer money to. As far as the elevator, that's a service that you're providing for a specific amount of money. So I'll look forward to seeing what the final agreement is. And we're not authorizing the MOU tonight, are we?
That was the proposal, but if we have to make changes and bring it back.
Yeah, I think you're going to need to hear what these folks had to say and incorporate some of that language and then bring it back. But I'll support this going forward this time. But in 2 years, if you come back and you want us to continue funding you, you're going to have a hard time with me. So you need to find a way to become self-sustaining, which means you probably need to, make yourself more integrated with the rest of the downtown businesses that currently aren't contributing.
Those efforts are underway.
Okay.
I think that the level of city funding, whether or not it exists in the future, is something that we're aware of. I think that the partnership between the city and the organization may have different traits than other charitable organizations throughout the city, and that partnership and the ability to team on things like tourism, the elevator, street tree lights, cleaning downtown physically, bring a benefit to the city. And whether or not we're able to change your mind over the next 2 years is really up to us. But I would love to see the partnership continue into the future. So I understand your position fully, and I respect it.
I don't disagree with that. And I went to Kansas City and picked up the Great American Main Street Award. And that was primarily due to 2 things: the Downtown Oregon City Association and the Urban Renewal storefront grants. So it's not that, it's that I think an organization that's designed to promote the businesses that are in downtown should be primarily supported by those businesses. So you need to find a model that lets you do that. I think the former people in DOCA maybe made some mistakes along the way as far as alienating some business owners that are downtown. I don't know how you're going to get there, but I would encourage you to try. Is there anybody else?
Just a comment too.
Rocky can go, and then I'd like to go.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Just an understanding of what the mayor's referencing is, it's part of a larger decision we have to make on the many applicants that come to us for financial aid and what is their status. So you have to differentiate yourself to the fact that you're a service provider, as you said, but it's part of a larger conversation. So realize you're not being singled out and you do bring value. So, thank you.
Commissioner Smith?
And in addition to that, I think sometimes the city doesn't understand how much of a value downtown brings. In fact, I don't think we would be in the place we are today at all with tourism if it wasn't for downtown. Downtown carried our tourism plan with a lot of help from Jonathan for a long time. And when we had our economic development staff presenting it to us, I want you to know they did not do the work. That came from downtown. And the way it was presented kind of seemed like it was an economic development project within the city, which it was on paper, but that's not who did the work. And, you know, some of us up here have been involved with tourism for a long time. And the elevator kiosk is something that I'm reading Vicky's letter, and I can't even believe how long we've been working on it. I mean, we've been working on it for years.
Different topic.
But it's all under the same umbrella. And so I think understanding the amount of work that downtown has done behind the scenes to get Oregon City, I don't think we'd be talking about tourism in Oregon City at all if it wasn't for the work that downtown's doing.
Commissioner McGriff?
I would concur with you, Rocky, Commissioner Smith. I am the representative from this commission to the DOCA board, and I've only been on the board for a little over 6 months, but I can tell you that they are working very hard to do a second membership drive. They are meeting with property owners to try to make amends if there are any amends to be made. And the board is really dedicated to providing services to not only our downtown business owners, but to the community at large. The downtown organization is a Main Street organization, and if you look at the Main Street model, all the main streets that are in the program are supported by their local governments. We probably have one of the lowest, the money that we give is not super high, but it is significant. I would not like to see us not supporting them because they are performing Main Street, and that is not an easy goal to make or to get. And I think at some point in time, we need to have another presentation on what Main Street means and what that brings to it so that the other commissioners who are not as familiar with it as I am and Rocky will understand how they work together. It is an economic development engine that supports the city. I'm really proud of the work that they've done, and I've sat in on many, many, many meetings with Tony and Liz and Zach and some of the other board members to get this agreement where it needs to be. And we're a little bit behind schedule because of some other circumstances beyond both of our controls, but I would really like to see us support moving this forward with some minor amendments so that we can continue to do the work with Main Street that we need to be doing and continue to allow us to continue to be a performing Main Street. We are known all over the country. When I was at the National Trust Conference in Denver, we were known. Oh, you're from Oregon City. You guys were the National Main Street Award winners for 2018. Yes, we were. And that's a big deal in that community. And also at the Main Street Conference that was just held in Tillamook City, we were recognized for that as well. So we are on the map. And again, I concur with everything you said, Rocky, about they've carried a lot of water for us in the past. And I know that with our new staff person, Matthew, we're going to just go higher and higher and higher up that chain of recognition. So I support this request.
Okay. So you've, Commissioner Lyle Smith and Commissioner O'Donnell, will you forward some language to Mr. Conkle?
Sure.
As far as what amendments you'd like to see, and then if you could incorporate that and bring it back to us, I don't know, the next, we could get that by the next meeting?
I would hope so. Yes.
Please.
Yes, that'd be our goal. Yeah, so
right.
number 6, adding a prorated for reimbursement a non-performance penalty and annual review, and then a second year contingent on meeting goals of the first year was.
You got it.
What I heard.
Okay.
I thought there was already a review in there. Wasn't it 4 times a year?
Twice a year.
Yeah, so there's already a review in there.
I think I think
It's a
we were
report.
looking at it more as an update.
Yeah,
to provide.
yeah.
Respective to funding, it makes sense to have.
Have you met your deliverables is the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we need
I
any
will just
sort of
stay.
motion?
No, we don't.
Sorry.
No,
No.
you have direction.
Yeah. We're going to 70, 19-624 memorandum of understanding. Oh, no, that's the one we just did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. 19-625, Oregon City Elevator Kiosk Staffing Agreement with Downtown Oregon City Association, Mr. Conkle.
Thank you. The Downtown Oregon City Association received a Metro Enhancement Grant for the construction of an elevator kiosk, which has been completed and will be utilized to continue to promote the Oregon City elevator and the city as a tourism destination. The elevator kiosk will be located at the top of the elevator and will support many of the city's strategic initiatives, such as building tourism leadership capabilities, enhancing the brand of Oregon City, coordinating tourism assets through collaboration, and cultivating and curating a portfolio of experiences. The elevator kiosk will serve as a visitor engagement portal to Oregon City's downtown, will provide an array of visitor-focused information, and will help visitors explore the historic McLaughlin neighborhood. In an effort to provide exemplary customer service and meet several of the strategic initiatives identified within the city's tourism strategic plan, all elevator kiosk employees will participate in a Travel Oregon Gold customer service training program, which will be funded by the city. The cost of the program is approximately $30 per person. We're proposing to start the elevator kiosk operations in March of 2020. In March through May, it'll be open 8 hours a week, ramping up in June of 2020 through September for 48 hours per week, and then ramping down as the tourism season slows down in October through December at 8 hours per week. The estimated funding for the 1 year period is $20,180, and the agreement will expire on December 31st of 2020. The funding source will be from the transient lodging tax, which is dedicated fund for tourism-related activities. Through this, DOCA will work proactively to develop a sustainable funding stream to support elevator kiosk activities beyond the lifespan of the proposal. To do so, DOCA will explore additional funding sources such as net proceeds from merchandise sales at the elevator kiosk, tourism development implementation grants, and collaboration with existing and new stakeholders. DOCA will provide quarterly reports to the city's economic development department on metrics tracked at the elevator kiosk, including the number of visitors to the elevator, number of walk-ins assisted by the elevator kiosk staff, and retail sales numbers. So we are asking and recommending approval of this agreement and expenditure of the transient room lodging tax funding for this kiosk.
Is there a motion?
There's citizen.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry, there's a citizen comment.
Oh,
And I have a question too.
Tress?
Yes. Oh, here.
Thank you, everybody.
Name, please?
Trieste Andrews and Vicki Yates, we've put a letter together that I think it was submitted. So Vicki Yates and Trieste Andrews individually and on behalf of the Midtown Business District for these notes to be made part of the record. Vicki Yates and I, Trieste Andrews, are both residents and businesswomen in Oregon City. Vicki Yates is the owner of the Singer Hill Cafe, and I am the public relations for the Three Rivers Artists Guild. We are here individually and on behalf of the Midtown Business District, which is essentially the 7th Street corridor commercial area of the McLaughlin neighborhood. Our business district consists of a group of about 90 businesses that are connected via email, and we meet as necessary. We're very excited for the kiosk to be installed on the observation deck, since Midtown is one of the 2 destinations of the elevator. We understand that DOCA's focus is on downtown, since they are the stewards of the downtown businesses' goals and objectives. However, as business merchants in the Midtown District, which is in the McLaughlin Conservation District, we believe it is crucial that Midtown is included in all phases of the elevator kiosk project. Past history on this issue is very relevant since Vicki and I were both part of a committee that originally planned for the elevator restoration in 2016. Staff members from DOCA were also part of the committee, and we met regularly together for over a year to ensure both downtown and midtown were represented. Due to the 3-minute time constraint at the meeting, I thought I'd be at the public record. I won't go into detail regarding the workings of the committee, but further background on the original elevator committee can be found in an addendum to our written comments. The main points we'd like to make is from being on the original elevator committee are these. With DOCA's blessing, Vicki and I personally contacted all of the Midtown businesses, updated the map, designed a brochure that included the map and a description of all the historical sites, raised over $1,000, and printed thousands of the brochures. These were intended to be displayed and disseminated in the elevator. However, shortly after the brochures were finished, DOCA received grant money for a tourism plan, which included a kiosk for the elevator. As a result, the elevator committee was disbanded and our Midtown's involvement ended as well. As a result, we now have thousands of Midtown Business District brochures, but they have not been distributed. Our purpose tonight is to ensure that Midtown's involvement and the brochures will be clearly represented in the plans for the e-kiosk, both verbally and in writing. Unlike DOCA, Midtown does not have a storefront to provide information to tourists, and it is imperative to us that we have a strong presence in the kiosk and that Midtown is represented as strongly as downtown. These are our recommendations. 1, require DOCA to get approval from the Commission for both oral and written scopes of information regarding Oregon City that will be available in the kiosks. This should include the Midtown brochure. 2, to the extent tourists ask kiosk staff about businesses in the area, whether for gift shops, dining options, or other tourist-related services, DOCA elevator staffs would be required to learn about what is available in Midtown, where most of the historic sites are located, and provide information on Midtown businesses as appropriate. Number 3, recognize that downtown and Midtown are not the only parts of Oregon City with tourist attractions. The CCC Observatory, Environmental Learning Center, Clackamas Rep Theater, and the Rose Farm are all just a few examples of places that should be represented in the kiosks. The kiosks should provide information about tourist-related places in Oregon City as a whole. We would like to conclude this short presentation with our promise to help DOCA in this exciting elevator initiative in any way we can. We believe that the definition of community is giving each other a helping hand to achieve our goals. I personally would like to thank DOCA for their support of the Three Rivers Artists Guild in helping run different community art projects that took place this past year. And in turn, we would like to extend a helping hand to DOCA for the elevator tourism project and make Oregon City community the best that we can be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smith.
I don't think that the commission wants to make a decision on every brochure that's passed out at the elevator, but
You think?
I agree.
I mean, there definitely needs to be a criteria and some sort of, and I wouldn't mind being part of that. I think we've had that conversation.
Didn't we talk about it in the committee?
Sorry, I think that's been sort of worked on, but.
We do already, there is a brochure rack for 30 brochures in the desk, the kiosk desk. And we do have a place, we have places for city brochures, Three Rivers Artists Guild, the Midtown Business Alliance, and DOCA. So we've only got about 6 of them dedicated so far, but Midtown is definitely on that list. But we've got 24 others that we can fit in there.
But is there, it seems to me there should be, rather than the first 20-some people that show up with brochures.
Yes,
there needs to be a criteria saying that this is, representing a certain business district or is tourism related or, there's got to be some sort of guidelines that not everyone that has a business card throws their business card in there.
We did come up with some for the elevator kiosk committee that both Rocky and I were on. And the thing that we talked about was exactly what you said, and that you weren't quite involved in it, but Jonathan was still here. And that's what we determined. The thing that we did not want is we did not want brochures for, vinyl siding or windows or insurance companies or things like that.
Any random stuff, yeah.
Random stuff like that, but it was going to be the historic sites, the Midtown, things like that.
It is dedicated towards a tourist experience.
Orientation,
And
right.
so all of the brochures would be tourist-based experiences.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Lyle Smith?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I love the public comments. I think you're spot on about tourism, including more areas of Oregon City and not just downtown, particularly Midtown. And there are some things on the hilltop that you mentioned. So hopefully that relationship can continue. And we want to hear back. We want to hear feedback. I think because it sounds like this is our first year. It's kind of a pilot year. We'll be learning a lot. So I would encourage folks to definitely, give us feedback on how you think it's going and how we can improve. I think we're all taking your comments to heart and definitely support what you have to say and your recommendations. I think they're great recommendations. So I support all of your recommendations.
Thank you.
Of course, as I did with the last one, I'm going to turn to the details of the agreement. Can you explain to me a little bit? I'm not familiar that much with the kiosks of the. You've costed out 2 people to participate. Is it because it's a big desk, or is it?
It will be staffed 1 person at a time, but we'll have 2 staff members that will do it. So they'll split up the shifts.
Think of it as 2 FTE versus 2 people.
So it's not going to be 2 FTE.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Just said think of it that way. So.
Yes. Yeah. So.
So you just confused me. So what is it? Is it 2 people?
It is two people, but 1 person at a time. So we will have to. It's too many shifts for 1 person. So we have to use 2 people to cover all of the shifts in the high season.
Okay, I'm trying to reconcile that with your budget, which implies that it's 2 people for all of the hours that you have in the budget. Which implies that there's 2 people sitting there for the 8 hours every week during the time period, and the same thing for the other.
So that didn't go into the calculations. The calculation is based on the hours, not on the number of people.
Okay, then can you tell me what the 2 means in the budget that was provided in the direct cost?
It's just so that you know that there are 2 staff members. It doesn't go into.
Okay, I'm going to question this budget, then can you please explain?
Okay, so for example, January through May, 4 hours. So we took the $15 per hour times the 208 hours.
Which is 2 people. If you scroll up, and I did this earlier, there's 8 hours a week in your March through May. I know that table says January, but I think you mean March through May. 8 hours, it comes to roughly 100 hours a person for that March through May. So I assume that was multiplying it by 2, which would be 2 people at 15 for 208 hours, which came to 3,120. Am I reading that correctly?
You are reading that correctly. I need to.
I know I'm putting you on the spot, but. So because I didn't think it would need 2 people, so that's why I was trying to find out why.
We are not staffing it with 2 people at a time at any point. And the 2 was not added into any of the calculations.
Right.
So it's only based on the hours.
So it sounds to me like there's some question about the budget that isn't going to be resolved tonight.
Calculate. Why don't you just review the calculation and see if it makes sense as to what we heard?
Yeah, and the only other question I had was about the invoicing. And there was a statement in here that I thought was interesting. And it sounded like we were going to be invoiced on an average number of hours versus actual hours, and I'm trying to find that. Here it is. Payment terms. The services will be invoiced monthly based on the average monthly rate over 10 months and payable by the first of the following month. I read a lot of contracts and I'm not totally sure what is happening with that statement. And nor, okay, it's not just me. I mean, I know it's 9:40, but.
I just knew you were gonna do it, so I wasn't gonna.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. They're relying on me. So anyway, can we review this? I'm sorry. I totally support the work, but I just have too many questions about this and the budget.
Were you involved in this, Mr. Parno? Maybe we should get our chief numbers guy in on this, huh?
We will clarify the number of hours per week relative to the number of employees proposed.
And all the numbers that go with that, so that Rachel can look at it and understand that it works.
I tried to understand it. I promise.
No, I'm not
trying to
saying
support
it's
it,
just
but.
Rachel. Okay, then, we will, hold this over until, the next meeting when you can get the correct information to us. Does anybody have anything? Oh, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Does anybody have anything to pull from the consent agenda?
Nope.
Then is there a motion for the consent agenda?
I so move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded for discussion. Call the roll.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Rachel L. Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Mayor Dan Holliday.
Aye. I'm glad, because I already signed all that stuff. Mr. Manager, you have anything for us tonight?
Just a couple, first an update from Mr. Lewis.
Really?
Everybody leaves.
South End Road landslide activity.
Children.
Smart move.
I'm sorry. I was like, what? Oh, no.
You got 3 minutes.
Okay.
I have to go.
It was John.
My fault, totally. Okay, South End Road.
Landslide update.
So just a short update, we went through this a couple years ago when we had some land movement along South End Road. So this is South End Hill, between South Second and the top of the hill. If you use that road as regularly as I think y'all do, you probably notice that there's continued changes, slight but continued changes on that roadway. Received an email from the county that indicates that they're monitoring it. One of the actual geotechnical corings that they put in the edge of the roadway there, when they were done with it, they filled it with a concrete slurry, and because of the settlement, the concrete slurry isn't settling like the ground around it, so it kind of popped the little cap that was sitting on top of it. So you may have noticed that, but they're monitoring it, and they've shared with us the geotechnical report that they received from a company called Shannon and Wilson. Very good firm, same firm that's working on the I-205 Abernathy Bridge. What's going on with my voice?
So they're gonna monitor it right up until the time they have to clean it up off of 99.
Right.
I'm sorry,
We're gonna monitor it right up until the time they clean it up off of 99.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I think for the city commission's benefit, it's a slow-moving slide, and I think we've always known that. And the biggest concern I have is the drainage. I think a lot of that slide is activated by drainage along the edges, and as one edge of the road falls, then lots of drainage goes to that outer edge and creates more problems there. So we're continuing to work with the county, but and we're advocating more maintenance than probably what they're wanting to do. I think their first position is always to close South End Road, and so we need to advocate differently. If you talk to a commissioner, be sure and let them know how important keeping that facility open is, because that may make a difference as well.
Close South End Road?
Yeah, that's what they did last time. I don't know if you remember that, but they closed it so they could do more repair work.
Well, I don't have a problem with closing it for a couple of days to do repair work, but it sounds to me like they're waiting for it to fail so they can close South End Road permanently. And, you know, that's one of the main ways to get to South End.
If I wasn't clear, I didn't mean permanently. I meant they would close it for a period of time while they fix it. The problem is the fix is much bigger than what they did the last time, which was do structural digouts there. The fix, as I understand it, and we've actually sent the report to our geotech to review. I haven't had a chance to circle back with them, but the idea would be, what I understand is they need more of a soldier pile wall that would be, you know, a lot more money than what they had originally planned. So we're working with them, continuing to work with them. I think, again, if you have an opportunity to talk to your county commissioners, be sure and let them know that South End Road is as you said, very important facility for Oregon City.
Okay, thank you.
There's no news there. I mean, whether they put a turkey baster plug in here that's now standing proud, or you got a user like me and sees that crack developing in the middle of the road because half of it is settling, you know, let's keep in mind, that's an alternate egress if there's a problem on 99. So, I know how much you enjoy dealing with all those folks.
And if you drive to Canby as much as I do, which is typically at least there and back once a day, it's very often that there is a major accident at South End Road 99. It happens at least once a month.
Yeah.
That road is somehow closed and they use the alternate emergency path through South End Road.
Well, I guess the other element of that is, right, it's always posted, it's been posted for weight limited roadway. They've asked about patrolling that and increased patrol of that. And we've talked about additional signage there to get trucks turned sooner in case they're oversized so that they use.
Increased patrol of what?
It's just geologically unstable. I mean,
Weight restricted, it's weight restricted, so increased patrol.
If the county would just fix it, then they wouldn't have to keep going back and repairing it.
Dan, they've been working on that road since long before I started working for the city, and they keep doing these
I know.
Band-Aids.
I know.
They keep doing the
But
Band-Aid because they don't want to spend the money.
There are lots of places in this country that have roads like that they fixed once and they're fine because they put in the proper, drainage, the proper, whatever boundaries that you're going to put up to keep the thing from sliding off the hill. Yeah, I'll be happy to talk to the county commission.
That's a road I do not use.
She was here.
No,
thank you for that.
They're all on speed dial on my phone, so.
They've all blocked you, by the way.
No.
Laura's about to ask you to talk to Metro, so buckle up.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
I think increased,
What's next? We're about out of time.
Let's go.
increased
Laura.
patrols would be helpful because they drive up that hill behind Public Works going up South End. It's like the Speedway. I mean, I don't use it because it's not safe.
They're trying to maintain their speed in case they have to jump
off the cliff? Yeah, okay.
We're moving on now.
All right.
What's next?
With the Willamette Falls Legacy Project, we created a cultural landscape report, which is a report that documents how the site has changed and developed over time. That report has recently won an award from the Oregon chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects, which is one of their design awards. And so we won for the research category, and we got the Award of Excellence, which is the highest honor. So,
Congratulations.
congratulations.
Just a reminder, tomorrow here, 6 p.m., we have the Economic Development Manager meet and greet. Also tomorrow, our interim Community Services Director, Don Robertson, will begin here at the city, and that we are closed on Monday in observance of Veterans Day. That's all that I have for you tonight.
Okay.
I apologize. I have one thing.
Go ahead.
I wanted to bring to your attention a situation that recently occurred in the McLaughlin neighborhood and ask for a referral to the Historic Review Board. I have been in discussions with Community Development Director Laura Turway and City Manager Tony Conkle about this particular issue. So what you are seeing before you is that we had a house on 3rd Street that was pretty much torn down all the way to one wall, which you can see on the right.
Looks like it needed to be.
Well, it was a very tiny little house. The houses you can see on the left, that's what it looked like before. And they pretty much tore everything down, and of course over the weekend. And basically, I think we have a little gap in our Historic Review Board requirements, and I want to recommend that we refer back to the Historic Review Board a small code change that when there is a substantial demolition of a building that basically changes the way that that particular building looks. So the purpose of the Conservation District is to preserve the integrity of not only the designated structures by assuring that modifications of those structures are appropriate. When somebody tears a house down like this that's not designated and they completely change the way it looks, it does affect the integrity of the district. And it's just a small little loophole that we did not anticipate. Laura, you have another slide for a different house that it's kind of the same thing happened. The one on, Yeah, I don't have
Still
control of
two
that. So this is a house that, you can see the before, kind of modest house, little 1.5 story, and now it's kind of gigantic. Really changes kind of the.
Did they have to go through planning?
Not really, because we have a little gap in our code that basically says if you're not designated and you do this, you don't have to go through review. And what I'm suggesting is that we refer this back to the
No,
historic.
you're missing my question here. In this house, if they did that extensive an addition, didn't they have to get permits?
Well, they, yes, got permits. They didn't have to go to the historic review board.
Well, then the house wasn't designated, right?
Right, but there is a substantial change of, in my opinion, over 95% of the building has been completely changed, which affects the integrity of the other buildings in the conservation district.
I'd be willing to have you guys bring back something and let us look at it.
So I wanted to ask that this be referred to the historic review board so that they can look at it and then bring it back to us.
It's fine with me.
Looking for consensus.
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Okay.
They can look at it. I don't know that we'll agree with what they say.
My phone has been blowing up about this for the last.
So, I mean, I'm
Just so
trying to
we're clear.
understand, like demolition of a building that needs to come down versus.
It didn't need to come down.
Well, I meant the other house where they only left some weird funky wall.
It sounded like the request from Commissioner McGriff was to have the Historic Review Board look at both our definitions of demolition as they relate to the historic district, as well as when undesignated structures in our conservation district need Historic Review Board review. Right now, it's based off if you go to 30% or more addition, you need to go to HRB review. While you see these 1.5 story houses, when they get a full second story and even a little bit more than that, it feels a lot bigger, but really it's mathematically less than 30%. So the concern is that our triggers for review of non-designated structures, are they okay, or should they be modified?
So I have a question. Go back to that first slide.
Or the other slide.
Yeah, the other slide.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so
I don't understand what happened.
as I can,
I don't want to tell you tonight, but I can tell you what happened. So.
I can see what happened. So can you demo that much without a permit? Can you rebuild that much without a permit?
Permits would be separate from the HRB review. In this case, we're just talking about, or Commissioner McGriff is only talking about Historic Review Board. You certainly need demo. You need all the permits for.
I mean, the indication was they did it on a weekend like they were trying to sneak it in. And
they did not get a demo permit because they weren't required to.
Right, but they got their building permits, right?
Building permits that were required. Yes.
Did they get the building permits after they did this?
Yes.
It wasn't code enforcement. The code enforcement has been settled. There was work that was completed before building permits were issued.
So if we have somebody that builds something without a building permit and they get caught and they come back, is there a penalty? I'm going to tell you something.
Okay.
So when I was in the electrical industry, if I went and put in a fire alarm system without a permit and I was caught, or my general contractor didn't pull the fire alarm permit or whatever, when I went back to get it, the cost doubled.
I believe we have that
Yeah.
provision in some of our building requirements. We don't have that in any of our planning requirements, but I'd have to double check to give you 100% answer.
It seems like the incentive to make sure that somebody pulls a permit is the fact that if they don't pull the permit, it costs them double.
Well, Dan, this was all done over the weekend without any permits, and then they came in later. So
Right, and that's what I'm saying.
That's why my phone was blowing.
And I'm willing to hear, the HRB thing, but more importantly, we need to discourage people from doing this stuff without getting a permit in the first place.
I would totally concur with that because it happens regularly.
I think you have a consensus, right?
Yeah, so just so I'm very clear on what that consensus is, I'm going to go to HRB and I'm going to ask them to look at the definition of demolition and when non-designated structures in historic districts should receive historic district review. And am I asking them to to lower the bar so that things like this, which didn't need historic review board review, should get historic review board
That is
review?
my-
Or am
that
I
is-
just saying, look at it to make sure
That
it's
is my
okay?
request.
That's her request.
The bar
see
needs to be lowered.
We'll see what discussion ensues after it goes through the historic review.
Okay, so so I'm very clear from the whole commission, I am just saying, this situation happened. Do you guys have any recommendations on this?
Yes.
Yes, and then actually, I would like to take the HRB recommendations and send them through the planning commission before they come to us.
Just
Because-
check in for advice
Yeah,
kind of thing?
Yeah, check in and
Okay.
let them look at it.
Okay.
And then what about, I think Dan has a point where we really want to discourage people from doing this stuff without getting permits. And I don't know how to go about doing that because it's very discouraging when people call you on the weekend and say, the contractor told me I didn't need to do X, Y, or Z, or whoever it is. You know, we've got tree cutting going on the weekends, we've got demos going on the weekends.
Okay.
People do stuff.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything for us?
No.
I had, I
do.
Okay, go ahead.
Want to ask the commission if we want to revisit or visit the annexation policy. Apparently, there's an annexation coming to us next meeting.
So, can I answer that?
Well, the commission can answer that.
Well,
Yes.
okay, so currently, the way the laws sit, and if you go to Corvallis or to Philomath, they are currently processing applications under 1573 because the appeals court did not issue a stay. So we have no choice but to continue to process applications. That's the legal place we're in right now. Am I wrong, Ms. Richter?
The stay with regard to Philomath and Corvallis was not granted, so yes, I think that we have an obligation to, the city has made a policy to comply with 1573 up to this point. If the city would like to change its policy with regard to how it wants to deal with 1573, it can do that. And it can do that either through a work session where you decide you want to change your policy, or you can change your policy as part of your evaluation of this next annexation that's going to come before you.
Right.
But I think that the state of the law with regard to the relationship between 1573 and home rule is, is squarely in the hands of the Court of Appeals, and we can talk about the merits of that, but our office's recommendation won't have changed because we don't have any more information.
Can I speak?
We've only had one come, well, I'm not sure if this is accurate. We've had one annexation come through since the new commission has been here, correct?
Parkway is the only one.
The
I
emergency.
haven't worked on any
I'll have
annexations since I've
to
been on.
check
It came to the planning commission when I was on
the
planning
city in general has processed about 10 under the Senate bill, I believe.
How big is this new one coming up?
Tiny.
Tiny?
It's tiny.
Small, but it's also a zone change, annexation,
It's
subdivision.
very small.
I think what
I had planned on scheduling a work session in early January or February to talk about this. Our work session schedule is pretty much full through the end of the year. So if we want to talk about it after the first of the year, that's fine.
Not if there's annexations coming up.
Then we can have that discussion as part of the annexation. I think we're on.
That's what I'm saying. So if anyone feels the same, you should speak up.
I feel the same.
I feel the same.
Here's what was the statement that was made, the question that was posed. Can the city delay annexations until such time as the court case runs its course? Not saying we're denying them, just delay the decision until the court case is finalized. That was presented as a potential option in a recent meeting that I don't think anybody was aware of. Did I understand that correct?
I don't know if we can delay. I think we could not issue a decision which would potentially lead to what's called mandamus, where you're taken to court. I think there's, we had talked about new policy. We had talked about dealing with it when the annexation comes up and have the debate about the Senate bill. Declaratory judgment with the circuit court as to the interpretation and applicability.
In the process of that.
And I believe the other one was not issue a decision one way or the other.
Pending the outcome of the court case.
I don't think we
I don't
can wait
think-
that long. I
Yeah.
don't think we can wait that long. I mean, there's different types of there's different scales of annexation that will impact the timeline that the city has to make decisions. So I can't just give you a global answer to that tonight.
Some of these annexations could be because they need to hook up the water.
Yeah.
And we,
Right,
and they were
but that-
special.
They wouldn't have gone to a vote anyway.
No, they were special. Yep.
They wouldn't have gone to a vote anyway.
Yeah, they would.
It is,
Yeah, they all
it is
would.
10 o'clock.
Not if it's an emergency, they
I
wouldn't.
just want to mention that.
Thank you. 10 o'clock.
How would the commission like us to proceed with this?
I don't want to discuss it in the process of reviewing an application. I don't think
Well,
that's
we have
fair.
an application next meeting.
Well, I don't know if the city has to take action on that annexation in the next meeting, or if we could continue it in order to accommodate a work session. I don't know whether the timing, where we are, I don't know, but I'm just saying it could be that we could continue the hearing from the next meeting until,
Is there a time, I mean, you know, we have the 120-day rule, that doesn't apply to annexations, but, so where is the point where we start to be in trouble when we postpone or delay?
well, this is not just an annexation though. I think this includes other components that may be subject to time limits, so I've got to figure that out.
Well, they can be separated.
Yes, they can, but I have to figure that out.
Yeah, we don't have to do concurrent applications.
Time's up.
There's nothing to see on the screen.
No, it's gone. Oh, there it is. What the hell happened? All right.
Kicked a wire
Do you know what's going on yet?
No.
No.
Okay.
I heard three of us wanting to have a discussion.
Okay, when would you like to have that discussion? As part of the annexation application?
I would
If you
prefer not.
if you separate it, we can have that discussion. I'm not interested in having that discussion when there's a concurrent application for all three of those things. Because one is contingent on the other. And then we get into the 120-day rule. So, is there anything in our code that says we have to accept concurrent applications?
We've already reviewed this as a concurrent application. It's been received and processed as a concurrent
I'm
application.
not asking about this application. I'm saying application general.
We have language in our code that encourage applications
But
to
not
combine.
required, right?
We're not going to have this discussion about the specifics anymore
I'm
tonight.
not-
Yes, you are. What we're talking about is.
Please do not raise your voice.
What we're going to do is decide whether we're going to have a work session or whether we're going to consider it in the form of an application. But we're not going to argue specifics again. I'm not doing it. So, do you want to consider this application without having discussion about annexations, or do you want to have a discussion about annexations first?
I'll go for the discussion on annexations first, separate from any other proceeding.
I would agree.
There you go.
Okay. Work out the timing. We're adjourned.